Chapter 1461. My name is Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian beamed. Why, you're Duan Ling Tian? Upon hearing Duan Ling Tian's reply, the old man was stunned before he shifted his eyes to his waist instantly. The moment he saw the outer court disciple order token, his eyes lit up right away. You're that outer court disciple who killed the Earth Rankings powerhouse yesterday in the death duel in the outer court district yesterday, aren't you? You've heard about that already too, Elder. Duan Ling Tian chuckled, acknowledging it indirectly. Great, great, you have such a solid innate talent in martial Dao, yet you're still so polite. How rare. The old man had a precious kind expression on his face. You flatter me, Elder. Duan Ling Tian smiled humbly. I'm Fang Gan. If you need anything in the future, you can just come to find me here in the Merit Pavilion. If I don't happen to be on duty at that time, you can look for me in the inner court. Thanks for your kindness, Elder Fang Gan. It had never crossed Duan Ling Tian's mind that the old man would say such words to him. At once, he quickly expressed his gratitude as his heart was filled with emotions. After all, he had only just greeted the old man out of politeness. After bidding farewell to the old man, Duan Ling Tian proceeded to leave the second level of the Merit Pavilion and went to the third level. When he came to the third level of the Merit Pavilion, he could see a counter that looked more or less the same as the one on the second level of the Merit Pavilion by the entrance. There were two middle-aged men sitting behind the counter, and it was obvious that they were the people in charge of the third level of this Merit Pavilion. After sensing their spiritual energy, Duan Ling Tian could distinguish that their strength was not as great as Fang Gan's on the second level of the Merit Pavilion. These two people have a strength that is on par with an outer court elder. They should be either outer court elders or inner court deacons. Duan Ling Tian could more or less guess the identities of these two men. Put your spatial ring down and enter, ordered one of the middle-aged men nonchalantly as he glanced at Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian nodded his head before putting his spatial ring down and entering the third level of the Merit Pavilion. After entering the third level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Ling Tian glanced all over and could not help but be visibly moved. This was because the third level of the Merit Pavilion was separated into three sections that each housed various treasures. These three sections were the Pill section, the Saint Weapon section, and the Dao Talisman section. Duan Ling Tian went to the Pill section and searched for many 3-star healing medicinal pills and 3-star sensory pills. On top of that, he also bought some 4-star Saint grade pills that were exorbitantly priced. He felt a sense of loss as he spent the merit points. The price of just one 4-star Saint grade pill started from 10,000 merit points. Duan Ling Tian was actually not surprised by this at all. As far as he knew, the most outstanding alchemist in the Moon Illumination sect was also only a 3-star Saint Refinement Master who could only refine 3-star Saint grade pills at the most. These 4-star Saint grade pills that were even more valuable had been obtained by the Moon Illumination sect through other methods at a dear cost too. Therefore, the price set was particularly high. The pile of pills that Duan Ling Tian bought added up to almost 200,000 merit points. After leaving the pill section, Duan Ling Tian came to the Saint Weapons section. He realized that almost all of the Saint weapons there were Earth-rank Saint weapons. Furthermore, a majority of them were inscribed with Saint inscriptions. Of course, the Saint weapons that were inscribed with different Saint inscriptions were priced differently too. Without a doubt, the Saint weapons that were not inscribed with any Saint inscriptions were the cheapest. Those Saint weapons that were inscribed with basic 1-star Saint inscriptions were slightly more expensive, while those that were inscribed with better 1-star Saint inscriptions were even higher priced. As for those Saint weapons that were inscribed with many 1-star Saint inscriptions, they were way more expensive. Of course, all of these Saint weapons could not compare to the Saint weapons that were inscribed with 2-star Saint inscriptions. The 2-star Saint inscriptions were categorized into various grades too. Over there, Duan Ling Tian could see many Earth-rank Saint weapons that were on the same grade with the 1000 Mass Sword and the Gale Hammer. On top of that, there were also other Earth-rank Saint weapons that were much better than them and were inscribed with more than 2 Saint inscriptions. Of course, the prices were even more ridiculous. It was so expensive that the price was labeled at almost 1,000,000 merit points. These Saint weapons are really cash-burning items. However, in addition to having the sun-shooting bow, I also have the 1000 Mass Sword that I obtained from Feng Fan, so for the time being, there's no need for me to buy any other Saint weapon. Duan Ling Tian clicked his tongue and left the Saint Weapons section for the Dao Talisman section. The items that were on sale in the Dao Talisman section were all Dao Talismans. Each of the Tao talismans had a detailed description by its side. 2-star Golden Energy Talisman. Once it's activated, it'll form a layer of golden energy shield on the caster and will last for 15 minutes. It can be used to defend against attacks from a martial or Tao cultivator on the Mastery Saint Rudiment stage or below. A martial or Tao cultivator who is on the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage will be able to break through it. The moment Duan Lingtian saw the descriptions for this Tao talisman, he could not help but be dumbfounded. With this Tao talisman, even if one was only an ordinary person, one would be able to withstand the attack from a martial or Tao cultivator who was on the Mastery Saint Rudiment stage or below for 15 minutes while receiving 0 damage. This is brilliant stuff. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up while he looked at the price of the 1-star adamant talisman. 20,000 merit points. When he saw the price, the corner of his mouth twitched violently for a moment. It's only a one-time usage Tao talisman and it actually costs 20,000 merit points. This is not a sale. This is daylight robbery. Right then, Duan Lingtian finally recalled why it was said that the Tao Talisman Master was one of the 2 main occupations that could accumulate wealth by unfair means in Tao Martial Saint Land. The other occupation that could accumulate the most wealth by unfair means was the Saint Inscription Master. After going one round in the Tao Talisman section, selected pieces of Tao Talisman entered Duan Lingtian's sight one by one. Their respective descriptions also entered his field of vision one by one, dazzling him for a moment. 2-star Divine Strider Talisman. Once it's activated, it'll allow the caster to enter a level that's on par with a Mastery Saint Rudiment stage martial or Tao cultivator and will last for 15 minutes. The Divine Strider Talisman was a life-saving Tao talisman. Other than the 2-star Divine Strider Talisman, the 3rd level of this merit pavilion also had many 1-star Divine Strider Talismans. However, there were only a few 3-star Divine Strider Talismans. Once the 1-star Divine Strider Talisman was activated, it would increase the caster's speed to be on par with an early Saint Rudiment stage martial or Tao cultivator and would last the same time as the 2-star Divine Strider Talisman. The 3-star Divine Strider Talisman could increase the caster's speed to be on par with a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage martial or Tao cultivator and also lasted the same as the 2-star Divine Strider Talisman. A Paramount Saint Rudiment stage's speed. Duan Lingtian's eyes brightened up as he was overwhelmed with excitement. I must buy a few of such talismans for defense. However, when he saw the price of the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, he felt as though a bucket of cold water had been splashed on top of him, thoroughly extinguishing his excitement. 300,000 merit points. This is blatant robbery. He could not help but curse in a deep voice. However, despite swearing, he still took a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman. Bearing the pain of spending the points, this was indeed a valuable item. It could help to save his life at a critical moment. Another 300,000 merit points are gone now. Along with that pile of the Saint Grade pills, that's a total of 500,000 merit points. Duan Lingtian finally understood the feeling of spending money like water now. At this moment, he regretted being so generous to agree to return half of the wagers to the group of outer court deacons and disciples. Of course, when the thought rose up in his mind, he instantly suppressed it down again. No matter what was done now. Moreover, doing so did not necessarily bring 0 advantage to him. At the very least, he had forged a good relationship in the outer court district. And this 3-star Golden Energy Talisman can withstand the attack from a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage martial or Tao cultivator for 15 minutes, 200,000 merit points. Although it's slightly cheaper than the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, it's still kind of ridiculous. Duan Lingtian was dumbfounded. The 3-star Tao Talisman really was worth a lot. However, as a defensive Tao Talisman, the Golden Energy Talisman was still cheaper than the Divine Strider Talisman. Besides the vast difference between the 3-star Golden Energy Talisman and the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, the 2-star Golden Energy Talisman and the 2-star Divine Strider Talisman also had a difference of a whole 10,000 merit points. The 2-star Golden Energy Talisman was worth 20,000 merit points while the 2-star Divine Strider Talisman was worth 30,000 merit points. No matter what, it's still the 1-star talismans that are cheaper as they only need 2,000 to 3,000 merit points. However, the 1-star talisman's effect isn't really that great, and other than this 1-star Divine Strider Talisman that has speed similar to an early Saint Rudiment stage martial or Tao cultivator, it can only withstand the attack from an early Saint Rudiment stage martial or Tao cultivator. To Duan Lingtian, the 1-star Tao talismans did not have much significance. Since there were defensive and speed Dao talismans, there would surely be offensive Dao talismans too. There were various offensive Dao talismans. In fact, there were so many that Duan Lingtian became confused. However, soon, Duan Lingtian was sure of something, which was that the price of the offensive Dao talisman was much higher than the speed Dao talisman, the Divine Strider talisman. Not only that, but there were also only 2-star offensive Dao talismans that were on sale. Not a single 3-star offensive Dao talisman was there at all. Once a 2-star offensive Dao talisman was activated, it could cast an attack that was on par with a Mastery Saint Rudiment Stage Martial or Dao Cultivator. If those Martial and Dao Cultivators who were on the Mastery Saint Rudiment stage and below were struck by the 2-star offensive Dao talisman, other than those who could defeat an enemy who was a level higher than them, they would either be crippled, if not dead. The price of the 2-star offensive Dao talisman is the same with the 3-star. How ridiculous! Duan Lingtian was dumbfounded again. However, he still took one of the 2-star offensive Dao talismans with the intention of buying it. In just a short while, he had already taken a variety of items that were worth 700,000 merit points on the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion. It was fortunate that there was nobody else on this level. Otherwise, they would be stunned with jealousy. However, when Duan Lingtian took these items to the entrance of the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion to pay the bill, he still shocked the 2 inner court deacons for a moment. "Are you sure you want to buy all these?" one of the inner court deacons asked in disbelief. He had no choice but to ask for confirmation. Even an inner court disciple would never spend so extravagantly. On top of that, this young man in front of him had an outer court disciple order token hanging from his waist. It was obvious that he was only an outer court disciple. "Just swipe the card," Duan Lingtian replied nonchalantly. When 700,000 merit points were swiped out of his crystal card, he could not help but be hit by a pang of pain. Seeing how the 700,000 merit points went through, the 2 inner court deacons exchanged glances with each other right away. Both of them could see the inexplicable astonishment in each other's eyes. Since when had an outer court disciple become so rich now? Chapter 1462. After the 2 inner court deacons watched Duan Lingtian leave the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion, his silhouette proceeded to disappear before their eyes as he climbed up to the 4th level. Could he be the last disciple of an inner court elder or something? One of the inner court deacons muttered. Since he was only an outer court disciple, it would only be possible for him to take out that many merit points if he was the last disciple of an inner court elder. The last disciple in this context meant the final disciple, of which his master would never take in any disciple anymore. Usually, the last disciple was always someone who was highly doted on and highly regarded by his master, so much so that his master would spare no resources to train him. Even if he were the last disciple of the inner court elder, he'd not have been that rich either. That was a total of 700,000 merit points for goodness sake. Not 70,000 merit points. He didn't even bat an eye when he swiped the card. The other inner court deacon smiled wryly. Just like him, no matter what, he was still an inner court deacon and held a position in the Moon Illumination sect that was on par with an outer court elder. However, his entire wealth only accumulated to barely 500,000 merit points. When he did not make any comparison, it was all right, but when he did, he would only infuriate himself. He had never even heard about such thing as an outer court disciple swiping 700,000 merit points away casually, let alone seeing it. Whilst the 2 inner court deacons were in shock over Duan Lingtian's extravagant spending, he had already gone up to the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion, which was also the final level. There was also a counter by the huge entrance of the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion with an old man in white robes with a white beard sitting behind it. The old man was resolutely sitting right there, appearing like a dormant, gigantic beast. In just one glance, he used a sense of invisible pressure. When the old man's spiritual energy swept out, Duan Lingtian was overwhelmed by an unfamiliar sense that he had never experienced before. What powerful spiritual energy! He's definitely not in any way inferior that Elder Gon, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. This white-robed old man who was on the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion had spiritual energy so powerful that he was in no way inferior to Fang Gon, the inner court elder on the 2nd level of the Merit Pavilion. It was apparent that he was an inner court elder too. "Are you Duan Lingtian?" Just when Duan Lingtian walked over to the counter and took off his spatial ring sensibly without the need for the old man to instruct him, the sturdy, white-robed, old man finally opened his mouth and studied him with interest and astonishment in his eyes. "Do you know me, Elder?" Duan Lingtian was stunned. It had never crossed his mind that he would be recognized. Could this old man have also gone to the outer court district yesterday and witnessed the death duel between him and Feng Fan? That old fella Fang Gong has just transmitted a voice transmission talisman to me, saying that you've come to the Merit Pavilion and even praised you in an extravagantly colorful phraseology. Now that I see you firsthand, you're indeed a fine man. As for the others, before the old man finished his sentence, a powerful aura had already risen up from his body and swept out as though it had transformed into a gigantic beast that had its bloody mouth gaping wide open as it pounded towards Duan Lingtian to swallow him whole. Duan Lingtian had never thought that the old man would suddenly overwhelm him with his own power, so at that moment, he was completely unguarded as well. The powerful menacing aura charged at him head-on and gave him a tremendous sense of pressure. However, one should not forget just how powerful his body and just how tenacious his will was. Of course, he would not be affected by the old man's manner. No matter how strong the wind blew, he would still stand steadfastly on his ground, remaining firm and unshaken like a mountain. Seeing how his own imposing manner did not make the purple-clad man take a step back, not even the slightest change in his expression at all, astonishment could be seen in the old man's eyes right away. It looks like that old fella Fang Gong didn't speak in superlatives. It was obvious that he acknowledged Duan Lingtian's strength. Elder Fang Gong, you flatter me. I'm just an ordinary outer court disciple, Duan Lingtian replied humbly. An ordinary outer court disciple? The white-clad old man snorted. I've never seen any ordinary outer court disciple who could defeat and kill Feng Fan, who was ranked in the Earth rankings. Young man, having talent is a superb thing, but too much humility will make you lose your dashing spirit of a young person. Thanks for the guidance, elder. Duan Lingtian sweated profusely. This elder had actually told him off for not showcasing a full display of his abilities. That's enough. Put your spatial ring here and enter, said the white-clad old man, waving his hand. All right, Duan Lingtian nodded. After he had put his spatial ring down, he walked to the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion. Before he entered, he had already guessed that this level of the Merit Pavilion must be the place that housed all sorts of saint-grade martial tactics. This was because it was already the last level of the Merit Pavilion and he had never seen a set of saint-grade martial tactic at all in the previous levels. One of the main reasons he came this time was the saint-grade martial tactic. To be more precise, he was there for the human rank prominent saint-grade martial tactic. Before he came, he already had a target. Therefore, he did not spend very long choosing this time. Even on the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion of the Moon Illumination sect, there were not many human rank prominent saint-grade martial tactics. Duan Lingtian's gaze instantly locked onto one of them, specifically the saint token that stored the saint-grade martial tactic. Beside the saint token was a paragraph of descriptions, introducing the name of the saint-grade martial tactic inside the token and the techniques it contained. Looking at the description by the side of the saint token, Duan Lingtian muttered, the rock soaring the 9 heaven, the gargantuan Taishan, the golden shirt, yes, it's this one. So, it turns out that the saint-grade martial tactic that contains these 3 techniques is called the golden rock mass tactic. The golden rock mass tactic was also the saint-grade martial tactic that Feng Fan, who died by his hand yesterday, had cultivated. The golden shirt, the defense technique this saint-grade martial tactic contained, was the upgraded version of the silver shirt, the defense technique that Duan Lingtian cultivated. Right now, the silver shirt that he cultivated had already reached the highest stage, the impeccable stage. Unless he switched to cultivate the golden shirt, he would not be able to develop it any further. If he switched to the golden shirt, he did not have to start from the beginning, as he could just transform it to the 3rd stage, the competent stage of the golden shirt. Its force was the same as the highest stage of the silver stage. Before he went to the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian had already made up his mind to choose the saint-grade martial tactic that contained the golden shirt. Other than golden shirt, he had taken a liking to the gargantuan Taishan too. The gargantuan Taishan was a close-range offensive martial technique. He had experienced its powerful force before. Ever since he had come to Dao Martial Saint Land, attacking at close range had always been his disadvantage. He could only rely on the sound of death, the sole close-range offensive technique that was contained in the Colossal Arrow-Light Arrow, the saint-grade martial tactic that he cultivated. The Colossal Arrow-Light Arrow was a saint-grade martial tactic that focused on long-range offense, so the sound of death was still a little lackluster compared to the gargantuan Taishan. The Golden Rock Mass tactic was a saint-grade martial tactic that focused on close-range offense. Feng Fan's 1000 Mass Sword is already in my hand, So if I cultivate the gargantuan Taishan, its force will be far from being comparable by the sound of death when I match it together with the 1000-mass sword even if I've just started to cultivate it. Duan Lingtian was very clear about this. The 1000-mass sword was inscribed with the 2-star inscription, the 1000-mass saint inscription. If it was activated, it would cause the massive sword to be as heavy as 1000 tons, but it would not burden the caster at all. This is it then. With a jolt in Duan Lingtian's heart, he reached out a hand to take the saint token that contained the saint-grade martial tactic, the golden rock mass tactic, in his hand. Just as the saint token was in his grip, his face changed without reason suddenly. In the next instant, he quickly pulled his hand holding on to the saint token back as fast as lightning before taking 2 steps backward. At the same time, another hand swept past where the saint token was lying at a breakneck speed and even elicited a gust of wind. However, this hand was still too slow. Duan Lingtian had beaten him to snatch the saint token first. HMPH. You're an outer court disciple, yet you still dare to compete with me for the golden rock mass tactic. Don't even think about having it today before I've even borrowed it. A snort resonated. It turned out to be a young man who had somehow appeared beside Duan Lingtian out of the blue. He was now glaring at him with disdain and at the same time, he looked down at him in a haughty manner. Finally, Duan Lingtian could clearly see that the person who reached out to take the saint token after he did was an inner court disciple. He could see this from the inner court disciple order token that was hanging by his waist. If it were a polite inner court disciple who explained that he was in rush and wanted to borrow the golden rock mass tactic first, perhaps Duan Lingtian would have given it to him and let him borrow it first. However, this inner court disciple wanted to seize the saint token in his hand in the first place, and after that, he had even talked to him in a haughty tone as though he was giving an order. At once, Duan Lingtian's face turned grave. He was always a person who could be persuaded by a soft approach, but would never be cowed by fear. Therefore, in the face of this rude inner court disciple, Duan Lingtian merely cast a cold glance at him and did not bother to reply him before he walked towards the other section of the merit pavilion. The items housed in this section were not saint-grade martial tactics but some jade tokens that were stored with various messages. These jade tokens covered all fields and contained everything, and they were exactly what Duan Lingtian needed. Although it had already more than 1 year since he had gone to Dao Martial Saint Land, there were still many things regarding the place that he did not really understand. Through all these jade tokens, he could gain further understanding on this mysterious yet vast Dao Martial Saint Land. How dare you ignore me? Watching how Duan Lingtian just left with the saint token after casting a nonchalant glance at him, the inner court disciple was first stunned, and by the time he snapped back to his senses, he burst into fury. It had never crossed his mind that the moment he came out of his closed-door cultivation and gone to borrow the second half of the golden rock mass tactic to read, he would happen to come across such an outer court disciple who did not know what was coming for him. In the outer sect of the Moon Illumination sect, the only people who could elicit dread from him were the 5 outer court disciples who were placed in the Earth rankings. As for the other outer court disciples, he thought nothing of them at all. He had seen the 5 outer disciples who were established in the Earth rankings before, so he could tell that this outer court disciple was not one of the 5. If it were not for the fact that battling was not allowed in the Merit Pavilion, he would have long taught this insolent outer court disciple a lesson. Looking at Duan Lingtian's silhouette, the inner court disciple threatened, "Boy, everyone needs to pay for their foolishness. I'll give you one last chance to send the saint token over and apologize to me. Otherwise, whatever takes place after you've left the Merit Pavilion will be out of your control." Chapter 1463. In the face of the continuous provocation and threats from the inner court disciple, Duan Lingtian could no longer hold it in and turned around to cast a cool glance at him before spitting out a single word, "Idiot." The moment Duan Lingtian opened his mouth, the inner court disciple was instantly dumbfounded. Idiot. Had this guy just called him an idiot? Had an outer court disciple actually dared to call him an idiot? At this moment, all the inner court disciple could feel was his raging flame of rage that was about to burst out as he was unable to hold it in. However, when he returned to his senses, Duan Lingtian had already picked out a few jade tokens and was already making his way to the great entrance of the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion. Taking a deep breath, the inner court disciple suppressed the boiling wrath of flame and followed him. Soon, he appeared in front of Duan Lingtian and beat him to the counter before walking away after snatching his spatial ring. It was obvious that he was not going to borrow the golden rock mass tactic anymore. The white-clad old man behind the counter did not stop him because this inner court disciple had not taken anything from the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion. He did not even touch the saint tokens containing the saint grade martial tactic inside the merit pavilion at all. Elder. When Duan Lingtian took out the saint token that contained the golden rock mass tactic and the few other jade tokens, he could sense that the inner court disciple's gaze was filled with cold murderous intent before he walked down the stairs. However, he just ignored it. He, Duan Lingtian, was not a person who was easily frightened. The golden rock mass tactic. This is a decent human rank prominent saint grade martial tactic. The old man took the saint token to have a closer look and nodded his head before looking at the few other jade tokens. These jade tokens only contain some ordinary information, but the amount it contains is quite huge, so each of them will cost 1,000 merit points. This golden rock mass tactic costs 30,000 merit points for a one-time reading and you can only read it here. Once you've handed over the merit points, you can start to read it, the old man told Duan Lingtian. Let's just process all of them all together. Duan Lingtian took out his crystal card and swiped more than 30,000 merit points. After he had stored the few jade tokens that contained information away, he proceeded to take the saint token with the saint grade martial tactic golden rock mass tactic and began to read. In just a moment, Duan Lingtian could feel the vast information gushing into his mind, becoming part of his mind right away. The entire set of the golden rock mass tactic was now stored in his mind. This was his unique ability. An ordinary martial or Dao cultivator would need to borrow and read the saint grade martial tactic or saint grade Dao tactic 5 times before they could completely master it. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, only needed one chance to memorize basically everything in just a second. Originally intending to drag the time to 15 minutes deliberately, he suddenly remembered the words that the white-robed old man behind the counter had uttered just now. It brought a smile to his face right away. I, as a young man, must have the dashing spirit of a young man. In that case. With a jolt in his heart, Duan Lingtian made up his mind. In the next instance, under the shocked gaze of the old man, Duan Lingtian put the saint token down. Elder, I've finished reading it. Finished reading it? Upon hearing that, the old man was bewildered for a moment as bafflement crept up on his face. Could you've started reading it when you were still inside? Many people would start to read the saint grade martial tactic on the 4th level of the merit pavilion when they came to borrow it. Whoever picked the saint token up in the merit pavilion had to pay the loan fee no matter what, even if he took the token out now. This was also to prevent anybody from reading the saint grade martial tactic in secret without paying any merit points. As the caretaker of the 4th level of the merit pavilion, other than collecting merit points, the old man had to monitor the situation on the level 2. Just take the inner court disciple who had left just now as an example. Because he did not touch any saint token or jade token, the old man did not stop him when he left. If he had touched any saint token or jade token, the old man would have definitely stopped him immediately when he was about to leave and asked him to pay the necessary merit points. In the face of the old man's query, Duan Lingtian smiled. What do you think, Elder? Boy, you really gave me a fright of my life. For a moment, I thought that you were really done reading the contents of the first stage of the golden rock mass tactic in just 1 second. So, it turns out that you've already read it when you were inside the 4th level of the merit pavilion, exclaimed the old man as he shook his head. It was apparent that he did not think that Duan Lingtian would be able to finish reading the contents of the first stage of the golden rock mass tactic in just such a short span of time. Had he found out that on top of finishing reading the content of the first stage of the golden rock mass tactic, Duan Lingtian had even finished the entire 5 stages, one would wonder what kind of expression he would have on his face. This was also what made Duan Lingtian unique compared to the others. He could memorize whatever saint grade martial tactic that was stored in the saint tokens in just the blink of an eye. This was what also gave him a unique advantage that no other ordinary people had. Just like now, he managed to memorize the entire contents of the golden rock mass tactic in one go just by spending 30,000 merit points and no longer needed to re-borrow it to read it. Unlike other ordinary martial cultivators who wanted to borrow and read the golden rock mass tactic, he had saved a whole 120,000 merit points. After all, an ordinary martial cultivator would need to read the golden rock mass tactic at least 5 times if they wanted to cultivate it to the highest stage. It was 30,000 merit points per session, so 5 times of borrowing it would equal to 150,000 merit points. Upon hearing the old man's words, Duan Lingtian merely smiled and did not explain further. What could he say? That he had already memorized the entire golden rock mass tactic and no longer needed to come to borrow it anymore. Even if he really did say so, the old man would not necessarily believe him. "Elder, I'll take my leave first." Duan Lingtian bade farewell to the old man and proceeded to leave. Just as Duan Lingtian was about to leave, the old man opened his mouth tacitly again to warn him. The inner court disciple just now was on the early saint rudiment stage. It was apparent that he never missed every single detail of the conflict between Duan Lingtian and that inner court disciple from the beginning till the end. "Although this isn't important to me, I still want to thank you, Elder." Upon hearing the old man's warning, Duan Lingtian smiled and expressed his gratitude. "Not important?" The old man was stunned. "Doesn't the sect have a rule saying that an inner court disciple isn't allowed to bully an outer court disciple at the outer court district? Let alone the fact that he's on the early saint rudiment stage, even if he's on the intermediate or mastery saint rudiment stage, would he still be daring enough to attack me?" Duan Lingtian smirked. The old man was astounded. "So, this is how you actually think. However, you're very mistaken." Oh, when Duan Lingtian heard that, he could not help but be filled with confusion. The Merit Pavilion is situated right at the juncture between the inner court and the outer court district. Strictly speaking, it isn't considered as the outer court district here. Of course, it's not considered as the inner court district too. It's more like a middle district, the old man explained. The inner court disciples are allowed to make a move on the outer court disciples here. As long as they don't kill or cripple the outer court disciples, there are basically no other limitations. Oh, so that's how it is. If that's really true, this piece of information is indeed very important to me. Duan Lingtian had never expected the situation to actually be like this. Once again, he expressed his gratitude towards the old man. Originally, when he had the conflict with that inner court disciple, he was already prepared to receive his revenge. Of course, that was before when he thought that that disciple did not dare to make his attack on him until he had finally entered the inner court. Even when he had already entered the inner court, he would not necessarily be afraid of that disciple. Now that he heard the old man's advice, he knew just how wrong he was. It turned out that the Merit Pavilion was situated at a place where it was no longer considered as the outer court district, so the outer court disciples were not protected by the sect rules. Early saint rudiment stage. However, after knowing that the inner court disciple was only at the early saint rudiment stage, Duan Lingtian's worries vanished again. After leaving the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian proceeded to go down and came to the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion in just a while. Just as he was about to head downwards, an inner court deacon behind the counter of the great entrance of the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion suddenly called out to him, "Hey, are you Duan Lingtian?" The inner court deacon's eyes were filled with curiosity. It was apparent that his partner beside him was equally interested too. Obviously, they guessed Duan Lingtian's identity but were not fully certain yet. "Yes, I am," Duan Lingtian nodded. Then, with the realization that dawned on the two inner court deacons, he left the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion and continued to walk downwards. So, he really is Duan Lingtian. No wonder he can spend so lavishly. Exactly, that was a whole 700,000 merit points gone just like that. I heard that he earned 3 million merit points yesterday. Today, he even generously returned half of the merit points that he has to the people of the outer court district who had given him those merit points. As they exchanged their opinions, the two inner court deacons sighed emotionally. Elder Fang gone. When Duan Lingtian passed by the Merit Pavilion's 2nd level, he greeted the old man whose eyes stared widely open some time ago and who was smiling at him before heading to the 1st level of the Merit Pavilion after the old man had nodded at him. When Duan Lingtian reached the 1st level of the Merit Pavilion, he felt as though he had entered a morning market. Many inner court disciples were shouting and hawking their wares. Some of these stalls weren't here when I came. Duan Lingtian cast a glance at the 1st level of the Merit Pavilion and noticed there were many new stalls. At once, he called out to Elder Huo and started to stroll around the 1st level of the Merit Pavilion once again. Unfortunately, he did not come across any materials that were needed to repair the 7 Treasures exquisite pagoda anymore. It looks like I've run out of luck now. Duan Lingtian shook his head and chuckled wryly before striding outwards, leaving the Merit Pavilion. After walking a few steps, he came to a halt right away when he noticed somebody making his way to him with ill intentions. In just one glance, Duan Lingtian could tell that this person was the arrogant inner court disciple whom he had met on the 4th level of the Merit Pavilion. It was obvious that he had been waiting for him right there ever since he left the Merit Pavilion. "I thought you didn't dare to come out anymore." Looking at him, the inner court disciple smirked. It was apparent that he had been waiting for Duan Lingtian for quite a while now. Facing the inner court disciple's smirk, Duan Lingtian did not back down as he chuckled and mocked, "Didn't dare to come out. Do you really think that just you alone are enough to scare me till I wouldn't have dared to come out?" Chapter 1464. Originally, the inner court disciple thought that the outer court disciple in front of him would seem bewildered the moment he realized that he was blocking him. However, who would have known that instead of being bewildered, this person had actually dared to talk back boldly? Somehow, he had no idea why, but dread started to rise up in his heart at this time. Could this outer court disciple have somebody backing him? Otherwise, why would he have dared to talk back to him, an inner court disciple, in such a manner? Was he not afraid that he would be beaten until he had to be bedridden for several months? At this point, many people had noticed the stalemate between Duan Lingtian and the man. One after another, they came forward to watch the show. Even the inner court disciples who were vendors on the first level of the Merit Pavilion had also closed their stalls to watch the show. To them, watching the show was much more interesting than guarding their stalls. Besides that, when there was such a performance to be enjoyed, nobody would have the heart to guard their stalls anymore because everyone had gone to watch the show too. "It's Yi Nan." Somebody recognized the inner court disciple who was in a stalemate with Duan Lingtian and mocked out loud, "Yi Nan, you're an awe-inspiring inner court disciple, so why are you battling it out with an outer court disciple? Don't you feel embarrassed?" Upon hearing that, Yi Nan's face turned various shades of green and white. It's him. At this moment, a few inner court disciples, who were also vendors from whom Duan Lingtian had bought items before, recognized him. He had left a striking impression on them, especially since he had slashed their prices to the point that it had reached their bottom line. Soon, the spectators surrounding them almost became a circle. Yi Nan had also never expected the scene to turn out like this. This had gone beyond his control and he was left with no option to back down now. "Who's your master?" Taking a deep breath, he asked Duan Lingtian via true energy voice transmission in a tamed tone. "My master." Upon hearing Yi Nan's true energy voice transmission, Duan Lingtian could instantly tell what he was thinking about. At once, he became delighted and asked with a grin, "What? Are you worried that there's a master who's also a high-ranking official of the sect behind me and you're scared of offending him?" Although Yi Nan used his true energy voice transmission, Duan Lingtian had answered him out loud instead. At once, everybody looked at Yi Nan slightly peculiarly. He's already blocked the person, but he's only now asking whether there's anyone behind him. Isn't it a little too late? Many inner court disciples chuckled as they ridiculed Yi Nan. "Ha, Yi Nan, don't tell me that you're afraid now. If you're already scared, hurry up and make way for this junior brother. Don't block him from returning to the outer court." Many people recognized Yi Nan, and the inner court disciples who were not so close to him taunted him. Tisk tisk, is an awe-inspiring inner court disciple actually turning into a coward in the face of an outer court disciple? How embarrassing. More and more spectators ridiculed. Yi Nan's face turned a shade of green as rage started to fill his heart. When his gaze landed on Duan Lingtian again, it was piercingly cold. "No matter who is behind you, since you don't know how to respect your seniors, I, as your senior brother, will teach you a lesson on manners." Yi Nan's words were high-pitched and sounded noble as he changed the reason he had originally blocked Duan Lingtian. "No respect for my seniors." Upon hearing Yi Nan's words, Duan Lingtian chuckled, "What terrible slander that is. Do you really think that after you've spoken such words, even if I had somebody behind me, he wouldn't dare to touch you anymore even after he knew that I'm in the wrong?" Yi Nan did not expect to have his limelight destroyed in just a few words. At once, he was ashamed and resentful as he could tell that the surrounding gazes that were looking at him had started to turn judgmental. "Actually, you don't have to rack your brains so hard, let me just be honest with you. I don't have anybody behind me, so you no longer need to speculate anymore. If you want to make your move, just go ahead. If you don't, scram. I still want to go back to cultivate and I don't have the time to waste with you," Duan Lingtian replied nonchalantly. At the end of his sentence, he huffed, slightly exasperated. Many inner court disciples shook their heads and remarked as though they craved nothing short of watching the place go down in chaos. "Ha, Yi Nan, don't tell me you're really scared, no. This junior brother has said that he has nobody behind him, so don't tell me that you're still scared to make any move now. How boring. At first, I thought that there'd be a show to watch, but who knows that Yi Nan would turn out to be this cowardly. The remarks entered Yi Nan's ears one by one and forced his face to swell in crimson red. He was so pissed that he could no longer hold it back as he glared at Duan Lingtian in rage. Today, as an inner court senior brother, I'll teach you a lesson on how to respect your seniors. Duan Lingtian had unmasked Yi Nan's futile efforts, again and again, causing him to be utterly infuriated to the point that he was almost losing his sanity. Noticing that Yi Nan was about to make his move anytime, Duan Lingtian grinned and said coldly, "Want to teach me a lesson? Well then, let's see whether you have that ability or not. You're looking for death." Yi Nan roared out loud and finally made his move. His body moved as though he was a tempest. In just a brief second, he had already gotten near Duan Lingtian. With just a raise of his hand, a 7-foot-long spear appeared and slashed towards the latter in a flick. As the long spear cut through the air, the spear's shadow blotted the entire sky. Like poisonous snakes that were charging out all at once, the shadows opened their mouths and snapped towards Duan Lingtian. As an inner court disciple who was on the early saint rudiment stage, one must admit that Yi Nan's strength had indeed reached a spine-chilling level. At the very least, he was in no way weaker than Feng Fan, who had not activated the 1,000 mass saint inscriptions on his broadsword yet. In the face of Yi Nan's countless spear shadows that were charging at him with menacing fury, Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged. Standing right there, he was unmoved as a mountain, as though he was willing to expose his entire being in front of Yi Nan. Just as many of the surrounding inner court disciples had their hearts hoisted up high while they started to break out in cold sweat for Duan Lingtian, the purple-clad man finally made his move. A broadsword appeared in his hand out of thin air, and the moment it materialized, his true energy gushed out into it, causing an unfathomable mystical aura to ooze out of the broadsword as though it had transformed into a 1,000-ton gigantic hammer in just a brief second. "Gargantuan Taishan," Duan Lingtian recited in his heart. With a lift of his hand, the broadsword trembled and suddenly started to slash around as it charged towards Yi Nan's menacing spear shadow that blotted out the entire sky. The broadsword moved like a typhoon. Wherever it swept past, it was as though a mountain had crashed down, making the air quiver as it set off a series of continuous rumbling thunder. As the thunder boomed, it spread out all over the place along with a series of tyrannical hurricanes. "It's the 1,000 mass saint inscription," one inner court disciple exclaimed out loudly. It was obvious that he had recognized the saint inscription that was activated on Duan Lingtian's broadsword. The moment Yi Nan heard the inner court disciple cry out, his face turned slightly pale. He could tell that this outer court disciple might really have an incredible background. What a joke! That was a 2-star saint inscription, the 1,000 mass saint inscription. The price of the saint weapon that was inscribed with the 1,000 mass saint inscription was at least 200,000 merit points in the merit pavilion. Could such a person who used this kind of saint weapon merely be an ordinary outer court disciple? Obviously not. At this moment, Yi Nan started to regret his decision. However, right now, he had exerted his entire force, so it was already too late for him to retract his attack now. Yet, he soon noticed that even if he did not retreat, he would not be able to inflict any harm on his opponent at all. As the howling sound rushed towards him, the mountainous broadsword clashed together with the long spear that Yi Nan lashed out with. The air also seemed to erupt in this brief second. A gush of tiny impact waves spread out ruthlessly, setting off a series of even more ghastly hurricanes. The tyrannical hurricanes caused the robes of the group of inner court disciples who were watching by the side to flutter. However, none of them gave a damn about this at all as they continued to watch Duan Lingtian and Yi Nan battle it out without batting an eyelid. As the air seemed to erupt, Duan Lingtian's broadsword swept out, took 2 steps backward under everyone's gaze. As for the other side, the sword in Yi Nan's hand, the inner court disciple, had snapped in two and was sent flying away. His hand that was holding on to the spear was now badly mutilated. On top of that, being caught right in the center of the detonation force, he also received the force coming at him forcefully after the long spear in his hand was sent flying away. His entire body blasted away before he crashed onto the ground more than 10 meters away miserably. Exerting this gargantuan Taishan and the 1,000 mass saint inscriptions together is indeed awesome. Even though Duan Lingtian's body was surging with his vital energy and blood, there were hints of excitement in his eyes. He had yet to start cultivating the offensive technique, the gargantuan Taishan, in the Golden Rock mass tactic, and had just casually cast it. However, along with the 1,000 mass saint inscription, the effect it demonstrated took him by surprise and delight. That sword swept out grandly as though everything would have to make way for him. That kind of tyrannical satisfaction caused all of the blood in his body to boil with burning violence now. Right now, he only felt excited and he itched to throw his head behind with a carefree laugh. Inner court senior brother. Casting a nonchalant glance at Yi Nan who was lying on the ground like a dead dog, Duan Lingtian smirked. After he retrieved his 1000-mass sword, he strode towards the outer court district under the horrified gaze of the group of inner court disciples. Yi Nan heard the mockery in Duan Lingtian's tone and at once, he was so infuriated that his energy and blood surged upwards, adding more damage to his injuries. In the end, he fainted at once. At that moment when Duan Lingtian's silhouette disappeared in front of their eyes, the inner court disciples who were watching the battle started to snap back to their senses one by one. Exchanging glances with one another, each of them could see the bafflement in each other's eyes. One after another, the outer court disciples buried their heads in a discussion. The scene just now had given them quite a shock of their lives. Since when was there such a remarkable person in the outer court? In the entire outer court, only 5 outer court disciples could have defeated Yi Man this easily. They're all powerhouses who are at the peak of the mortal shedding stage and are listed in the Earth rankings. You're wrong. It's 4. Feng Fan already died yesterday. I didn't say it wrong. Yes, Feng Fan is dead but somebody has taken his place. Don't forget that after killing Feng Fan, that monstrous outer court disciple who has risen abruptly lately has replaced Feng Fan's position and taken his place in the Earth rankings. That monster seems to be called Duan Lingtian. Guys, do you think that it's possible that the outer court disciple just now was actually Duan Lingtian? Suddenly, a voice resonated. Now that you put it that way, it's possible. The broadsword in the outer court disciple's hand just now looks a lot like the broadsword that Feng Fan used before. Not only that, but it also has the 1000-mass saint inscription on it too. The moment somebody pointed it out, many of the inner court disciples finally returned to their senses. In the end, they were almost certain that the outer court district earlier was the monster who had just recently risen up to the top unexpectedly, Duan Lingtian. Chapter 1465. After they were certain that the outer court disciple just now was Duan Lingtian, the astonishment on the group of inner court disciples' faces increased. I've heard that Duan Lingtian's strong, but it has never crossed my mind that his strength is actually this ridiculous. Although it's partly thanks to the 1000-mass sword that he was able to defeat Yi Nan, it still didn't overshadow his own abilities, many inner court disciples mused. His reputation is completely justified. Duan Lingtian is even freakier than the rumors, another inner court disciple added. I heard that Duan Lingtian is still a martial cultivator on the perfection mortal shedding stage. He's actually this monstrous on the perfection mortal shedding stage, so I wonder how formidable would he be when he makes a breakthrough to the paramount mortal shedding stage or even to the saint rudiment stage. Somebody cried out in astonishment the moment he recalled Duan Lingtian's current cultivation base. At once, the entire scene fell into a dead silence. In the end, they had forgotten this one thing, that Duan Lingtian was only a perfection mortal shedding stage martial cultivator at that moment. A perfection mortal shedding stage martial cultivator who killed Feng Fan, who was ranked 99th on the Earth rankings, and replaced him. I think we've never had such a frightful person in the history of the 9 sect alliances who could charge into the Earth rankings with a cultivation base of just a perfection mortal shedding stage, have we? One of the inner court disciples asked. Duan Lingtian is destined to rewrite the history of the 9 sect alliances, Earth rankings. Many inner court disciples were excited. Duan Lingtian is a disciple of our Moon Illumination sect. This is an honor to the Moon Illumination sect. I heard that Duan Lingtian has earned a whopping 3 million merit points from the battle with Feng Fan yesterday. I also heard of that too, but it seems like he's given half of them back to most of the people today. However, even so, I'm sure the merit points in his hands must be still more than 1.5 million. 1.5 million, what insane wealth. He can be compared to those inner court elders in our inner court already, can't he? The moment Duan Lingtian's wealth was mentioned, many inner court disciples turned green with envy. He's Duan Lingtian, the rich guy who has at least 1.5 million merit points. The moment those few inner court disciples, from whom Duan Lingtian had bought items, recalled the scene of how he had come up with different ideas to bargain with them, they were so pissed that they wanted to throw up blood. At the same time, sorrow could be seen in their eyes. Come on, you're a millionaire who has millions of merit points. Did you really need to haggle so much when you buy an item that's only several thousand merit points? You really haggled the price from the original several thousand merit points all the way to just several hundred merit points. Of course, Duan Lingtian had an idea about the sorrowful complaints of these inner court disciples. After Yi Nan passed out, he returned to the outer court district and back to the standalone little courtyard that he stayed at. Upon returning to his room, he immediately entered the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. After passing the piles of materials to Elder Huo, he went to the second level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and took out the jade tokens that he had bought from the fourth level of the Merit Pavilion to study the ample amount of information it contained. There were many things that he was interested in inside the jade tokens. While Elder Huo was repairing the third level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Duan Lingtian's state of mind was completely immersed into the few jade tokens, or to be more precise, the ample amount of information stored inside the tokens. The information the jade tokens contained were all inclusive. There was information related to the weapons and medicine refinement of the Saint Refinement Master and the Tao Talisman inscribed by Tao Talisman Master, not forgetting the Saint inscriptions inscribed by the Saint Inscription Master too. There was also other information about other aspects that were too countless for the eye to see. The information that Duan Lingtian read about first was related to the Saint inscription. Although he had the broadsword that was inscribed with the 2-star Saint inscription, the 1000-mass Saint inscription, and he could see what exactly was the 1000-mass Saint inscription, he could only tell that the Saint inscription in the Tao Martial Saint land was different in approach but had similar effects from the inscription in the mortal continent. He was completely clueless about the other relations than they had. From the information recorded in the jade token in his hand, Duan Lingtian now had a deeper understanding of the Saint inscription. So it turns out that there are actually so many similarities between the Saint inscription and inscription. As long as I could find a corresponding point, there's actually not much difference between the inscription and the Saint inscription. I think it's not impossible for me to upgrade the inscription to the Saint inscription. Perhaps, the other memory of the rebirth Martial Emperor is kinda useless for me now, but the memory regarding the inscription Tao might be my tremendous wealth in the Tao Martial Saint land. A Saint inscription master represents wealth after all. After having a further understanding on the Saint inscription, Duan Lingtian also noticed that he might be able to find the corresponding point of the Saint inscription and the inscription if he personally studied the Saint inscription by himself. In that case, the rebirth Martial Emperor's memory regarding the inscription Tao would then be able to come in handy. He, Duan Lingtian, might become a Saint inscription master in the Tao Martial Saint land. In the Tao Martial Saint land, the worth of a Saint inscription was even much higher than a Tao talisman. The reason this difference existed was because the Tao talisman could usually only be used once, meaning that it would be gone once it was used once. Of course, Duan Lingtian also learned from the information in the jade tokens that a higher grade Tao talisman would even be able to use 2 to 3 times. Those higher grade Tao talismans were not something that the Moon Illumination sect could easily reach. To the Moon Illumination sect, they were merely a myth. Unlike Tao talisman, the Saint inscription was usually inscribed on a Saint weapon, and as long as the Saint weapon was not destroyed, the Saint inscription could always be used. It was for this reason that the Saint inscription was very valuable. Just like the 1000-mass sword in his hand now, even though it was only inscribed with a 2-star Saint inscription, it was already worth 200,000 merit points. A 2-star Tao talisman, on the other hand, was usually sold for several 10,000 merit points. Of course, there were some exceptions too, just like the 2-star offensive Tao talisman. Once the 2-star offensive Tao talisman was used, it could launch an attack on the Mastery Saint Rudiment stage level with a powerful force. After having a certain understanding of the Saint inscription, Duan Lingtian proceeded to read about the Saint Refinement Masters of both weapon and medicine refinement. However, very soon, he realized that he was most likely unable to refine any weapon or pill in the future anymore. All of this was because the Saint inscription masters in Tao Martial Saint land would need to be equipped with a purely fire-attributed body. Only then could one communicate with the flame that was needed to refine weapons and medicine. This was completely different from the Cloud Continent. In the Cloud Continent, as long as one's cultivation base had reached a certain level and he possessed the innate talent of an alchemist or weapon craftsman, anyone could basically solidify the pill or weapon fire from origin energy. It looks like every place has its own method of doing things, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself. However, he did not feel disappointed at all after learning about all this. This was because there was no lack of Saint inscription masters in Tao Martial Saint land, whether it was weapons or medicine refinement. The one lacking was the Saint inscription master and Tao talisman master. In Dao Martial Saint Land, other than the strong ones who were revered, the Saint Inscription and Dao Talisman were revered too. I guess when I'm free, I'll go ask Elder Fangon where I can learn the Saint Inscription. As long as I've mastered the root of the Saint Inscription, it'd only be a matter of time if I want to connect the Saint Inscription and Inscription together. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he could not help but be overwhelmed with excitement. Saint Inscription Master. He, Duan Lingtian, had the potential and innate talent to become a Saint Inscription Master. Not only that, once he became a Saint Inscription Master, he would become no ordinary Saint Inscription Master. Because of the rebirth Martial Emperor's memory, he might even stand a chance to become a Saint Inscription Great Master. Although it was only a matter of one word between the Saint Inscription Master and the Saint Inscription Great Master, the actual difference between them was huge like heaven and earth. Among 1,000 Saint Inscription Masters, there might not be even one Saint Inscription Great Master. After roughly learning about the other information the few jade tokens contained, Duan Lingtian began to focus his heart back onto cultivating. First, he wanted to transform the defensive technique Silver Shirt to the Golden Shirt. As the upgraded version of the Silver Shirt, the cultivation of the Golden Shirt was similar to that of the Silver Shirt. Therefore, it did not take him long to cultivate the Golden Shirt at the third stage, the competent stage. Right now, by casting the Golden Shirt, Duan Lingtian was covered with a golden sheer as though he had put on a layer of Golden Shirt. After successfully cultivating the Golden Shirt, he turned his attention completely onto the Saint Grade Martial Tactic, the Golden Rock Mass Tactic, and began to cultivate the offensive technique Gargantuan Taishan. This was a powerful technique that corresponded with the Thousand Mass Sword. Today, before he had even cultivated the first stage of the Gargantuan Taishan, he managed to send Yi Nan the inner court disciple flying with a blast when he first cast the Gargantuan Taishan along with the Thousand Mass Sword. An eye for an eye. The feeling of having his energy and blood surge to his heart contents made Duan Lingtian feel extremely awesome. Of course, while cultivating the Saint Grade Martial Tactic, Duan Lingtian did not forget to cultivate his cultivation base too. Right now, his main target now was to bring his cultivation base up to the paramount mortal shedding stage as soon as possible. By that time, his strength would definitely experience a spurt of progress. His saint veins would be open to their maximum limit too. In the Azure Cloud Mansion in Dao Martial Saint Land, a huge aerial island that was suspended in the air without any support was surrounded by clouds, appearing like a fairyland. There was a palace of incomparable luxury on top of this island. The palace was huge and sprawled across a large area. It was much larger than all the dynasties in the mortal continent. Behind the palace was a savanna-like garden with a lot of strange, docile animals and beasts roaming free, making the entire backyard appear extremely lively and full of vitality. There was a spacious pergola at the corner of the garden. The pergola was also hovering in the air. Underneath it was a vast lake with a variety of fishes swimming in it. In the pergola was a young man and woman who looked like a pair of golden boy and girl sitting opposite each other around a stone table. The stone table was full of delicious food that would whet anyone's appetite. However, right now, the man and the woman's minds were not on the delicious meals. To be more precise, the young man and the woman seemed to be lost in thought. "Ruer, are you thinking of Tian'er again?" The good-looking young man who looked similar to Duan Lingtian asked in a soft voice. "Brother Feng, why is Tian'er not yet here even though so many years have passed? Could something have happened to him?" The young woman was none other than Li Ru, Duan Lingtian's mother. Chapter 1466. Don't worry, as long as Tian'er has the ability to open the jade box that I left for him, he'll come to Dao Martial Saint Land without a doubt. I've already left him with a detailed address for him to find Elder Ku. The young man was none other than Duan Rufeng, Duan Lingtian's cheapskate father. Looking at his wife, he reassured, "When he has found Elder Ku will bring him to see us immediately." "We should have brought him along with us that time," Li Ru said regrettably. "Ruer, didn't you agree with my decision last time? Believe me, with the 3 Dao talismans that I left for him, along with the fact that he's an extremely blessed person, he will come to Dao Martial Saint Land safely." "Who knows, he might have already met Elder Ku already," Duan Rufeng replied. That time, the reason he had left his son behind was that he hoped that his son would be able to grow up in the mortal continent step by step so that it could stir up his potential more. If his son had already come with him to Dao Martial Saint Land long ago, his journey on the martial Dao would have definitely been affected. Which parent did not have great ambitions for their kids? Therefore, Li Ru had wholeheartedly agreed with this without any doubts the moment she heard about the stakes from Duan Rufeng. I hope so. Li Ru was still slightly worried. A few years ago when I went out, I came across the old prophet by chance and asked him to read Tian'er's future before. Duan Rufeng looked at Li Ru and smiled as he said. Before he could finish his sentence, she already interrupted him. You mean that old prophet who knows everything in the heavens above and the earth underneath, who claims to be able to read God's will? Li Ru had been here in the Azure Cloud Mansion for a long time, so she had already heard that there was an old prophet in Dalmartial Saint Land who could read God's will. However, his temper was extremely peculiar and he was only willing to tell the fortune for the people that he was fond of. Otherwise, he would not give a damn at all, no matter how powerful the force behind that person was. It's him. Duan Rufeng nodded. I heard that other than having an eccentric temperament, he'll also only tell the fortune for those he's fond of. On top of that, even if he only tells the fortune of those that he's fond of, he'll usually only tell it to that person in concern. Why would he be willing to tell Tian'er's fortune all of a sudden? Li Ru asked in suspicion. I have no idea why. Not only that, but I also couldn't even recognize him at first, and he was the one who took the initiative to look for me. When Duan Rufeng answered, his face looked strange too. He was the one who took the initiative to look for you. Li Ru was stunned. Although her husband was the mansion master of the Azure Cloud Mansion, it was still not enough for that old prophet to suck up to him, was it? Not only that, but Li Ru had also heard of the rumor that a leader from a force that was equally matched with the Azure Cloud Mansion had gone to the old prophet to ask him to tell his fortune but had been rejected by him instead. Therefore, he did not think that it was because of her husband's identity that the old prophet took up the initiative to find him. There must be some secret that he was hiding. I also felt kinda weird as well, but he kept talking about how God's plan isn't something that could be revealed to the mortals. Besides, after I asked him to tell Tian'er's fortune the moment I was certain his identity, he did not reject me and straightaway agreed to it. Duan Rufeng replied. He said that Tian'er is a greatly blessed person and in the future, he'll definitely surpass me. He also said that it was a good thing that I didn't bring Tian'er with me straight to Dalmartial Saint Land. Otherwise, I'd have caused Tian'er to lose his great opportunity. What great opportunity? Li Ru was perplexed. I've also asked him the same thing, but he said he had no idea. Duan Rufeng smiled wryly. Is it another God's plan that can't be revealed? Li Ru raised his brows. Brother Feng, the old prophet whom you came across isn't a fake, is he? Well, he didn't say that the great opportunity that Tian'er would come across is a plan of God that can't be revealed. He just said that even he didn't know what that is actually. He only knows that it was a great opportunity. That's all. From his words, the great opportunity that Tian'er will meet has already surpassed the range that he could predict. As Duan Rufeng shared more, astonishment could be seen even on his face as well. After all, that was his son. The bigger the opportunity that he came across, the bigger his accomplishment would be. Of course, he as the father, would be even prouder. If it were not for the fact that he wished his son to succeed, he would not have left his son behind at the Cloud Continent in the first place. Looking back at it, the decision he had made last time was correct. If he had brought his son to Dalmartial Saint Land, he would have caused his son to miss that great opportunity. As for the identity of that old prophet, I've double-checked many times and he's definitely not fake. Duan Rufeng was absolutely certain about this. If he really was the old prophet, then I guess the things that he said must be true, a great opportunity that even the old prophet could not predict. Looks like Tian'er must have obtained a one-of-a-kind opportunity in the Cloud Continent. A rare smile crept upon Li Ru's face. Haha, of course, Duan Rufeng's son would be a person who is greatly blessed. As the saying goes, like father, like son, right? Duan Rufeng laughed as he remarked. Do you actually have the audacity to mention your opportunity? Till now, every time I recall that incident that you said, I still can't help but break out into a cold sweat for you. If it hadn't been for the scattering of that devil cultivator's soul, you'd most likely still not able to fully master the ownership of your body now, Li Ru snapped. Upon hearing that, Duan Rufeng smiled awkwardly and had no words to refute. How's Jingru and our two other future daughters-in-law? When Li Ru recalled the three girls who came together with them, she asked. Among the three of them, other than Jingru, whose natural endowment is slightly trailing behind, Bai Yao and Xiaolan's innate talents are pretty good. In just a maximum of one more year, Bai Yao and Xiaolan's cultivation base will make another breakthrough again. Duan Rufeng chuckled. That's great. When Li Ru mentioned Bai Yao and Xiaolan, her face was filled with a smile as well. They were her two future daughters-in-law after all. Besides that, they had a great personality and they were fully smitten by her son as well. So many years had gone by but they did not have a change of heart at all. This was very similar to her situation and such a social opportunity was very hard to come by. Ruer, as far as I know, the two daughters-in-law have not fully acknowledged by Tianer, have they? As for the two other daughters-in-law of whom I've never even seen before, is it really okay for me to not send somebody to bring them to the Azure Cloud Mansion? Duan Rufeng asked. It's better to leave Ka and Fayer in the Cloud Continent for them to accompany Tianer. If we kidnap all four of our daughters-in-law, don't you think Tianer would hate you to his bones? Upon mentioning the two future daughters-in-law, Li Ru's smile on her face never ceased. One could imagine that if Duan Lingtian was there, he would feel an inexplicable sense of astonishment if he heard the exchange between his parents. The old prophet, did he say that he would have a great blessed opportunity that even he could not predict what that was? If he had followed his father to the Cloud Continent and come to Dao Martial Saint Land, he would not have met the great blessed opportunity, would he? Was that not the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda? If he had followed his father to Dao Martial Saint Land in the first place, he would not have gone to the overseas Saint Island and he would have never met the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda. It was all going according to God's plans. Of course, Duan Rufeng and his wife, Li Ru, had no idea that their son had already come to Dao Martial Saint Land since more than a year ago. Unfortunately, because the voice transmission jade slip inside the exquisite jade box had been damaged, Duan Lingtian had no idea where to meet with the person whom his dad had arranged. They did not even know that they were going to become grandparents soon. Just like Duan Rufeng and Li Ru who were completely clueless, Duan Lingtian also did not know that his father was actually the mansion master of the Azure Cloud Mansion, a powerful force in Dao Martial Saint Land. The power of the Azure Cloud Mansion was even greater than the Greenwave Han Mansion behind Han Shuinai. Right now, Duan Lingtian was standing obediently at the Moon Illumination Sect's outer court district on the second level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda inside the room in his own standalone little courtyard. My cultivation base has made another progress in 3 months. I'm a step closer to the paramount mortal shedding stage now. Duan Lingtian, who had stayed on the second level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda for 3 months, was very satisfied with the results in. Furthermore, I've successfully cultivated the technique in the Saint Grade Martial Tactic Golden Shirt to the 4th level, the proficient stage, as well. Not only that, but I've also successfully cultivated the technique in the Saint Grade Martial Tactic, the Gargantuan Taishan, to the 1st stage, the Fundamental Awareness Stage 2. To Duan Lingtian, the progress that he had made in this 3 months' time was huge. Of course, even though he had cultivated the Saint Grade Martial Tactic, the Golden Rock Mass Tactic, he did not forget to cultivate the Colossal Aerolite Arrow as well. However, the techniques that he mainly cultivated in the Colossal Aerolite Arrow were the Aerolite Strike and the Body and Arrow Synchronization. He had now cultivated these two main techniques to a certain level and he would need to spend a great effort if he wanted to raise them even higher. Of course, the progress that he made in the time that he managed to squeeze out in the span of these 3 months to cultivate was not particularly ridiculous. The reason the Golden Shirt was able to have such huge progress was that Duan Lingtian's body was originally monstrous, causing the Golden Shirt's cultivation speed to become monstrous too. 3 months inside the second level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda was equal to 1 month outside. After a month, Duan Lingtian walked out of his room to breathe some fresh air. However, the moment he opened his door, he noticed a dual invitation falling down right away. Has another person issued a dual invitation to me? Duan Lingtian frowned but still managed to catch the invitation in his hand. The moment he opened the invitation, he noticed that it was just an ordinary dual invitation. The person who issued the dual invitation was called He Zhang. He Zhang, isn't he the person who was ranked 3rd on the outer court rankings? His ranking in the Earth rankings was much higher than Feng Fan's. I think he's a powerhouse who's at the peak of the mortal shedding stage and is ranked 66th in the Earth rankings. It had been quite some time since he came to the Moon Illumination Sect's outer sect, so he had already gained some understanding about the other 4 Moon Illumination Sect outer court disciples who were ranked in the Earth rankings. Therefore, the moment he saw the name, He Zhang, on the dual invitation, he instantly knew who he was. Since it's not a death dual invitation, he mustn't be Lu Huan's man then. With a jolt in his heart, Duan Lingtian speculated in his heart, perhaps, he just wants to battle it out with me after hearing how I defeated Feng Fan to see who is better. That's all. The moment Duan Lingtian thought about this, his frown eased up right away. After placing his fingerprint on the duel invitation, he walked out of the courtyard. When he walked out, he noticed many gazes looked at him instantly. Each and every one of them was looking at him with anticipation as though they were waiting for something. Looks like many people know about the fact that He Zhang has issued a duel invitation to me, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. At once, in front of the group of outer court disciples outside, he announced that he was going to accept He Zhang's invitation and let him pick a time. Chapter 1467. He Zhang, on the other hand, had also responded very quickly. The battle would take place on the training field 10 days later. 10 days. He still needs that long to prepare. After hearing He Zhang's respond, Duan Lingtian frowned right away. Actually, it was not only Duan Lingtian who was perplexed about this. Even the group of outer court disciples who were waiting to watch the show could not help but feel bewildered too. Senior brother He Zhang wants to battle it out with senior brother Duan Lingtian in 10 days. Isn't that a little too late? Maybe the martial technique that senior brother He Zhang is cultivating is about to have a breakthrough soon. Perhaps. It looks like that senior brother He Zhang kinda fears senior brother Duan Lingtian too. He took the initiative to issue a duel invitation but actually dragged it out for so long before the actual battle. That's not strange. Remember that time, it only took senior brother Duan Lingtian a split second to kill Feng Fan. Senior brother Duan Lingtian's strength is definitely in no way inferior to senior brother He Zhang's. That's right. It's also basically impossible for even senior brother He Zhang to kill Feng Fan using that kind of method in a death duel invitation. Right now, the group of outer court disciples had already reached a stage of blind worship of Duan Lingtian's strength. Even though He Zhang was a powerhouse who ranked 66th on the Earth rankings and was even the 3rd on the outer court's ranking of the Moon Illumination sect, they had a higher opinion about Duan Lingtian in the battle with He Zhang. It was not because that Duan Lingtian had killed Feng Fan a month ago, but because he had defeated an inner court disciple in just one move. That duel had greatly raised the dignity of their outer courts. An outer court disciple defeating an inner court disciple. Just how glorious was that? You guys have that much confidence in me. When Duan Lingtian learned that the group of outer court disciples had so much faith in him, he could not help but smile wryly, as he thought of setting up another bet. However, come to think of it, even if he really set up another bet, most likely nobody would make a bet anymore. Of course, Duan Lingtian also knew that nobody would set a bet for such an ordinary friendly duel. Even if somebody did, nobody would place a bet at all. Due to the fact that a friendly duel would not place a person's life on the line, under-table transactions could be carried out. If I take a step back, you take a step back too. For the friendly duel between two opponents, they could join forces with the person who became the banker for the gamble and earn quite a lot. Nobody was a fool, so of course, nobody would be willing to make a bet in such a gamble. Are Ling Yun and Shang Hu in closed-door cultivation? Duan Lingtian went to find Ling Yun and Shang Hu and noticed that they were in closed-door cultivation. I didn't see them the last time too during the death duel between Feng Fan and I. Could they have been in the closed-door cultivation since the last time and still haven't come out yet? The reason Duan Lingtian went to find the two of them was mainly that he wanted to return the merit points that his teacher Fang Wei had asked him to safeguard to Ling Yun and Shang Hu. He planned to give each of them 50,000 merit points, giving the entire 100,000 merit points that Fang Wei had given him to the two of them. After all, he was not lacking merit points at all. However, since the two of them were in closed-door cultivation, he could only wait till the next time. Just as Duan Lingtian was about to go back to the second level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda to have another month of cultivation, an invited guest had gone to find him. It's you. This uninvited guest was not unfamiliar to Duan Lingtian. After all, they had met once before. It was none other than one of the two burly men from the residence of the outer court's grand elder, Dongfang Quan. Duan Lingtian, Elder Dongfang heard that you've come out of your closed-door cultivation and would like to invite you to his residence for a chat. The man did not beat around the bush. Elder Dongfang invited me for a chat. Duan Lingtian was stunned. He had no idea why Dongfang Quan would look for him because it was only a trade between them the last time, and a fair one between a buyer and a seller. Other than that, he had nothing to do with Dongfang Quan at all. Please. The burly guy looked at Duan Lingtian in a manner that said, if you don't walk, I'm gonna carry you straight away. Alright. Even though Duan Lingtian had no clue why Dongfang Quan would look for him, he did not reject the invitation at all. After all, he was still in the outer sect of the Moon Illumination sect, and it would not do him any good if he offended Dongfang Quan. No matter what, he was still the Grand Elder of the Outer Court, and if he wanted to go against Duan Lingtian, it would only be a matter of time for him to settle him. Apart from that, Duan Lingtian was also puzzled as to why Dongfang Quan would look for him. Once again arriving at Dongfang Quan's residence, Duan Lingtian met Dongfang Quan under the guidance of the burly man. When he saw Dongfang Quan, he was enjoying his tea in the pergola. Sit. After Dongfang Quan motioned to Duan Lingtian to sit, he looked at the burly guy who had brought Duan Lingtian there with a meaningful look, and sensibly, the burly guy retreated immediately. Are you curious as to why I invited you here? Dongfang Quan asked. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. He was indeed curious. I heard that you've accepted He Zong's duel invitation, haven't you? Dongfang Quan asked again. Yes, Duan Lingtian acknowledged. Why? Is there a problem? Do you know about He Zong's identity? Dongfang Quan questioned again. If I'm not mistaken, he must be the direct disciple of an inner court elder. Is that right? Duan Lingtian guessed. Although there was no rumor regarding He Zong's background in the outer court, Duan Lingtian knew that his background must not be ordinary. Just like Feng Fan before, nobody knew that he had a master who was an inner court elder. Shooting a wary look at Duan Lingtian, Dongfang Quan said, He Zong's master is the vice sect leader. Vice sect leader? Upon hearing that, Duan Lingtian was stunned as well. It was not his first day being in the Moon Illumination sect, so he definitely knew what it meant by the vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect. Even though he was not fully on the saint stage, he was at least half a step into the saint stage already. His strength was just merely beneath the sect leader and a few other saint stage powerhouses. It turned out that He Zong was actually the direct disciple of the vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect. That's right. Dongfang Quan nodded. Although this news is a little surprising, there's no problem for me at all, is there? That duel invitation that He Zong issued to me is only a mere ordinary duel invitation and not a death duel invitation, Duan Lingtian said with an unconcerned look. Well, you're greatly mistaken if you think like this. Despite the fact that I have no idea why He Zong didn't issue a death duel invitation to you, I know that the reason he issued that duel invitation to you is definitely not that simple, Dongfang Quan explained. Not that simple. I don't know him at all, so how could he have any enmity with me? Duan Lingtian shook his head with a smile. You don't have any enmity with him, but how about you and his uncle? Dongfang Quan asked again. His uncle, who is that? Duan Lingtian was perplexed. Under Duan Lingtian's perplexed gaze, Dongfang Quan spat out two words, a name that elicited a shock from Duan Lingtian right away, Lu Huan. Lu Huan, really? It's not a secret in this circle of the higher officials in the sect, Dongfang Quan continued, you're from the city governor's estate of Mound Hill City, and on top of that, you're the disciple of that city governor of Mound Hill City, Feng Wei. Lu Huan will definitely not let you go. The reason I invited you here is to warn you that you must be careful of He Zong. He Zong is Lu Huan's nephew. Duan Lingtian nodded his head, and at the same time, he stood up and expressed his gratitude as he cupped both of his hands in front of his chest. Thank you for your warning, Elder Dongfang. Haha, if you're really sincere, just give me another piece of 4th grade saint stone, won't you? Dongfang Quan burst out laughing as a crafty twinkle shone in his eyes. Yes, I will. Duan Lingtian was not stingy as well. With a raise of his hand, he took out 2 4th grade saint stones and 10 5th grade saint stones before placing them in front of Dongfang Quan. After putting away the saint stones, Dongfang Quan laughed as he asked, Tisk tisk, boy, could it be that you're actually a disciple from the 5-rated force who just joined our Moon Illumination sect temporarily to train yourself? In the face of Dongfang Quan's query, Duan Lingtian merely smiled and did not reply to him. He still needed to keep his sense of mystery in front of Dongfang Quan regarding this matter. It was this sense of mystery that became the pivot which maintained the relationship between Dongfang Quan and him, allowing the elder to dread him and not dare to look down on him. Elder Dongfang, if there's no other matter, I'll take my leave first. After he bade farewell to Dongfang Quan, he left right away. When he left, his face turned gloomy at once. At first, I thought that He Zong merely wanted a normal friendly duel with me, but who'd expected that he's actually Lu Huan's nephew? Lu Huan's nephew issuing an ordinary duel invitation to me, things are definitely not that simple. After knowing He Zong's background, Duan Lingtian was certain about this. Zhou Qi hasn't mentioned this at all to me, Suddenly, Duan Lingtian was reminded about Zhou Qi and frowned right away. The first thing that came to his mind was that Zhou Qi was hiding this from him, but very soon, he returned to his senses again. Perhaps even Zhou Qi himself doesn't know about this at all. However, Lu Huan has such a nephew that has a vice sect leader as his master. Why does he still need to be so fearful and even grovel to that inner court elder, Zhao Feng? Although Zhao Feng has a high position in the inner court of the Moon Illumination sect, it's still not as high as the vice sect leader, is it? Duan Lingtian remained puzzled even after a long time of pondering. If Duan Lingtian knew that Zhao Feng's backer was one of the few saint stage powerhouses in the Moon Illumination sect, he would not think like that anymore. Because of Zhao Feng's background, even the few vice sect leaders would usually not dare to pick any trouble with him. Of course, only a few high-ranking officials who were the highest decision-makers in the Moon Illumination sect knew about this. Even the outer court elders and inner court deacons did not know about this at all, let alone those outer court deacons and the disciples of both outer and inner courts. 10 days' time was equal to 1 month in the second level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. In this span of 1 month, Duan Lingtian had spent his time cultivating in the second level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. When the time had come, he finally left the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and his little courtyard, heading to the vast training field in the outer court of the Moon Illumination sect. The training field was filled with voices and shouts, making a great commotion. Other than those outer court disciples who were not in closed-door cultivation, there were many inner court disciples who made their way there too, far more than the inner court disciples who had gone to watch the battle between Duan Lingtian and Feng Fan a month ago. That time, only more than 10 inner court disciples had come, but today, hundreds of them had turned up. Some of these inner court disciples were those who had watched Duan Lingtian defeat Yinan, the inner court disciple, outside the Merit Pavilion a month ago, while some of them had watched how he had killed Feng Fan, who was ranked in the Earth rankings. The remaining came because they admired his fame and wanted to watch Duan Lingtian's abilities. Chapter 1468, Senior Brother He Zhang is here. One of the outer court disciple with a pair of sharp eyes exclaimed loudly. His voice had also attracted the gaze of everybody present at the scene. Under the watchful gaze of the others, a large-built, devilish-looking yet handsome, young man strode with a majestic gait toward them. His green robe fluttered and made him appear to be dapper in appearance, unrestrained and graceful. Senior Brother He Zhang. Many of the female outer court disciples' eyes shone brightly as though they were hungry wolves who had just seen their prey. In the outer sect, many of the female outer court disciples regarded He Zhang as their dream man. There were also many outer court female disciples who frowned and remarked, compared to Senior Brother He Zhang, I still like Senior Brother Duan Lingtian better. Senior Brother Duan Lingtian is handsome in a masculine way while Senior Brother He Zhang is handsome in a softer, feminine way. That's right. Besides, I find Senior Brother Duan Lingtian to be more handsome. I even dreamt about him yesterday. I've also dreamt about Senior Brother Duan Lingtian a few days ago. I even dreamt about him bringing a palanquin with 8 carriers to come to marry me. Marry you? Dream on. How can such a monstrous genius like Senior Brother Duan Lingtian fall for such a commoner like you? Tisk. As though Senior Brother Duan Lingtian would fall for you. Undoubtedly, there were more outer court female disciples who were on Duan Lingtian's side. In just a short moment, they drowned out the voices of those outer court female disciples who admired He Zhang. Even though Duan Lingtian had just been in the Moon Illumination sect for about 3 months, the few times that he made his moves within the sect had always taken the entire outer court by surprise. In the history of the outer court of the Moon Illumination sect, there had never been anybody who was like Duan Lingtian before. HMPH. Everyone's taste is different. I still prefer Senior Brother He Zhang. One of the female outer court disciples snorted with displeasure. At once, the group of outer court female disciples broke into a commotion again. In the end, due to the reason that they had more people in their side, Duan Lingtian's admirers managed to beat He Zhang's. HMPH. Although He Zhang did not really pay much attention to the fight between the female outer court disciples, he still listened to their exchanges. At once, he also snorted coldly to himself as a sharp gleam shone from his eyes. Duan Lingtian, you'll become a cripple after today. By that time, I'd like to see who will continue to admire you. He Zhang's heart was a little twisted. Before this, he had never given a damn about these female outer court disciples, and even though they confessed their love to him, he merely basked in the attention and had never given any reply at all. Yet, Right now, seeing how most of the female outer court disciples preferred Duan Lingtian more, he could not help but be engulfed by jealousy as though Duan Lingtian had just snatched his belongings. Senior brother Duan Lingtian is here. Just as an excited voice exclaimed out loud, the gazes that were originally on He Zhang shifted to the purple figure walking slowly towards the training field. He was a purple-clad young man who was huge-built and handsome. His dashing eyebrows were defiant and there was a smile as bright as the sun on his face, completely different from the devilish leer on He Zhang's face. He Zhang's face would make a person feel stressed while Duan Lingtian's face would give off a refreshing feeling. He's Duan Lingtian. He's only 35 years old, how young. Among the group of inner court disciples who came to watch the show, there were a few powerful ones too. Boldly, they used their spiritual secret tactic to probe Duan Lingtian and instantly found out his age of 35 years. Upon sensing the streaks of spiritual energy that were sweeping out at him, Duan Lingtian frowned but eased up soon as though he was unconcerned about it. At this kind of time, it was difficult for him to be concerned about that. There were at least 20 over inner court disciples who probed at him using their spiritual secret tactic. How could he possibly just go to teach them a lesson one by one? Right now, he still did not have that ability yet. To the outer court disciples, Duan Lingtian's age was no longer a secret as they had already found out about it 3 months ago. 3 months ago when Duan Lingtian joined the entrance assessment that the Moon Illumination sect held, he had already had his age probed by the outer court deacons using their spiritual secret tactic. Duan Lingtian. Right now, the entire attention on the scene had shifted from He Zhang to Duan Lingtian the moment the latter arrived, causing He Zhang's face to turn glum right away. Even though not many in the outer court knew that He Zhang, was actually the direct disciple of the vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect, he was still at least ranked 3rd in the outer court of the Moon Illumination sect and he was a powerhouse who was at the peak of the mortal shedding stage who ranked 66th on the Earth rankings too. Yet, today, his limelight had been robbed by somebody who had just entered the sect for only 3 months. How could he possibly accept this? An outer court disciple who had just entered the sect 3 months ago had actually received cheers in the outer court louder than the one that he, who became an outer court disciple 5 years ago, had received. Because of this, he felt that his dignity had been trampled horribly and thoroughly. Your junior brother Duan Lingtian. However, when He Zhang turned around to look at Duan Lingtian to greet him, the bitterness on his face disappeared without a trace and was replaced by a friendly smile. Of course, the friendly smile on He Zhang's devilishly handsome face somehow looked a little strange. He Zhang. Duan Lingtian cast a nonchalant glance at He Zhang. Don't you think it's a little too early for you to call me junior brother now? In the world of martial arts, the stronger ones are revered, so if you turn out to be weaker than me, don't you think it's a little disrespectful to call me junior brother? After learning He Zhang's identity, Duan Lingtian knew that he actually had ill intentions. Therefore, he did not bother to be polite at all even though it was his first time meeting He Zhang. Anyway, since it was a mortal enmity between him and Lu Huan, and He Zhang was actually Lu Huan's nephew, they were both on the same boat, so it was natural for him to wish for Duan Lingtian to be dead. In the face of the He Zhang who was smiling fakely at him, all that he could feel was utter disgust. Clamor. The moment Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, the group of outer court disciples burst into a commotion. It had never crossed their minds that the smell of gunpowder would be so overpowering the instant Duan Lingtian and He Zhang met each other. For a moment, they even became suspicious whether the two of them originally had an antagonism with each other. He Zhang had also never thought that Duan Lingtian would be this mad. At once, a glimpse of chilly brilliance flashed across his eyes. The brilliance flashed for a second and vanished in just the blink of an eye. However, Duan Lingtian still caught it. I was rash. I'm sorry. However, contrary to everybody's expectations, He Zhang did not get angry. Instead, he apologized to Duan Lingtian with a smile and for a moment, he appeared to be the bigger person. Look, this is the senior brother He Zhang that I admire a lot. Look how noble he is, unlike the senior brother Duan Lingtian that you guys admire. The moment he met senior brother He Zhang, he's instantly so aggressive and wants to argue a point to death. What a petty man, an outer court disciple who admired He Zhang exclaimed. Petty, police, this is senior brother Duan Lingtian's true character. Don't you know that? Besides, since senior brother Duan Lingtian uttered such words, it's obvious that he has the confidence to defeat that senior brother He Zhang of yours and become his senior brother. A female outer court disciple who admired Duan Lingtian replied, unwilling to take it lying down. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as an unnoticeable sneer crept up upon the corner of his mouth. If it were not for the fact that he had known about Hezong's identity, he would have most likely be deceived by his amiability. However, at this moment, vigilance rose in his heart. Hezong swallowed the humiliation and bore the disgrace. The reason he gave an impression of weakness was to make his opponent put his guard down so that he could launch a lightning-like attack at the critical moment. As the saying goes, roll with the punches. I hope that he'll be more obedient. Otherwise, I, Duan Lingtian, am not some soft persimmon that can be easily crushed. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. At the same time, he cast a nonchalant glance at Hezong before walking into the middle of the training field and turning to look at him. Let's start. My time is limited. I still need to go back to cultivating after defeating you. Defeating me? Hezong grinned faintly. It looks like you really are confident about your own strength. Don't tell me that you're not confident either. In that case, there's no meaning to this battle anymore, is there? Just go ahead and admit defeat then, Duan Lingtian replied coolly. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, even though Hezong swallowed his rage and did not erupt right away, he could no longer put up a polite facade in front of Duan Lingtian as he snorted with a grave face, I've long heard about your sharp mouth, Duan Lingtian. Now that I've experienced it, it does indeed live up to its reputation. Sharp mouth. Duan Lingtian smiled and mocked, since you think that my mouth is sharp, then there seems to be no need for you to retort back, is there? Isn't it more straightforward to make your move directly? HMPH. Do you really think that nobody in this outer court can defeat you anymore after you've killed Feng Fan and defeated an early Saint Rudiment stage inner court disciple? Facing Duan Lingtian's mockery, Hezong, who originally did not have an even temper, could no longer suppress his rage as he exploded all at once. Even if you're ranked 99th on the Earth rankings now, you're still too weak to withstand a single blow in my eyes. Since you want me to make my move, well then, I'll do as you wish. As Hezong reached the end of his sentence, he smirked. With a raise of his hand, a twig-like 3-foot blade appeared in his hand. Although the blade was narrow and long, it was perfectly straight in Hezong's hand. As he poured his true energy in, it emitted gushes of sharp aura. This aura was far from being comparable by an ordinary 3-foot blade. Saint inscription. The moment he felt this sense of aura, Duan Lingtian suddenly squinted his eyes as he realized that the narrow and long blade in Hezong's hand was also a saint weapon that was inscribed with a saint inscription. Duan Lingtian, I'll let you know very soon that you're absolutely nothing in my eyes even if you could kill Feng Fan. As the blade in Hezong's hand flicked, it suddenly bent and swept out like a keen snake with extreme flexibility. You said that I have a sharp mouth, but you're not quite bad yourself either. Mock crept up the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth as he remarked. You're looking for death. As Hezong's gaze turned cold, the 3-foot blade in his hand trembled and became perfectly straight again in a brief second. In the next instant, his entire being seemingly transformed into a brief flurry. Holding onto the 3-foot blade in his hand, he charged out towards Duan Lingtian in a straight line along with the sword swishing. Chapter 1469. Horizontal Lightning Slash. It was the only offensive technique in the human rank prominent saint-grade martial tactic that Hezong had cultivated. In fact, he had perfected it to the 4th stage, the proficient stage. Right now, as he cast his movement technique, the horizontal stride, he soon arrived before Duan Lingtian in just the blink of an eye. The 3-foot blade that was as narrow as a twig charged towards Duan Lingtian like a sharp thorn. Horizontal Lightning Slash. This attack was extremely speedy. It was so fast that it caused a sharp swishing to resonate in the air. This swishing seemed to be able to pierce through everything, causing the crowd watching from the side to turn horrified right away too. Of course, some of the outer court disciples whose cultivation bases were much lower could not even hear this sharp swishing sound at all. Gargantuan Taishan. In the face of this attack from Hezong, Duan Lingtian took out his 1000-mass sword and activated the 1000-mass saint inscription. As he swept his sword out, it was like he had hoisted a mountain up and thrown it outward to head towards Hezong's assault, striking out forward. You've overestimated yourself. In the face of this scene, Hezong smirked. The true energy from the sword in his hand pulsated like green electrical snakes that were wriggling around as it gave off a sense of pressure. The moment this aura appeared, Duan Lingtian's face turned grave right away. This gush of aura gave him an invincible feeling. Just like the sword in Hezong's hand, it had suddenly undergone an earth-shattering transformation at this moment and turned to become invincible. Rumble. The thousand-massed sword sliced through the sky and brought along with it a series of thundering noises that charged towards Hezong's horizontal lightning slice. Hezong's horizontal lightning slice, on the other hand, had traveled in a horizontal line from the beginning till the end, having no intention to dodge at all as it charged straight toward the thousand-massed sword that Duan Lingtian hoisted up and crashed down. In the face of the broadsword that swept out at it boldly, it had no fear at all. Finally, the sword in Hezong's hand pierced Duan Lingtian's thousand-massed sword. Just as the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth smirked when he thought that his sword could send Hezong and his sword flying away, a shocking scene took place in front of him. The sneer by the corner of his mouth froze right away. In confusion, he could see that the sword in Hezong's hand seemed to be really capable of destroying all strongholds. As the thousand-massed sword in his hand was hoisted up and smashed out, Zheng He's sword had pierced through the true energy he covered his thousand-massed sword with and went through the sword as well. After piercing through the thousand-massed sword, the twig-like, narrow, 3-foot blade pounded at him as though it had transformed into a poisonous snake. It was so fast that it was completely atrocious. Strange pupil. Within the time it would take for a lightning strike, Duan Lingtian's spiritual energy swept out speedily and gushed into his left eye to activate his strange pupil. At that instant, the speed of Hezong's sword started to decrease its speed in the field of vision of his left eye. Seizing the chance in the span of lightning, he quickly dodged to the side in a split second, but still, he was still a step too late. Hezong's sword brushed past his arm and tore his robe as fresh blood spurted out right away. It pierced into his body deeply at once. The piercing, heart-rending pain immediately shot up to Duan Lingtian's consciousness through his nerves, causing him to gasp right away. In the next instant, he quickly retreated backward. Hezong, on the other hand, did not seize this chance to chase him. With an overbearing manner, he looked down at Duan Lingtian from the top with eyes that were filled with mockery. Duan Lingtian, you're not that impressive, are you? What kind of saint inscription is that? It could actually pierce through the thousand-massed sword. No matter what, the thousand-massed sword is still an earth-rank primitive saint weapon. The moment Duan Lingtian recalled the scene just now, his heart was still filled with lingering fear. When he looked at the sword in Hezong's hand, hints of dread could be seen in his eyes. Not only had the sword ignored the impact force of the thousand-massed sword, but it had also even pierced through his true energy and the thousand-massed sword to attack towards him. The thousand-massed sword still had a hole as proof of the assault. The thousand-massed sword has actually been pierced through. Don't tell me that it's the penetration saint inscription. An inner court disciple gasped and exclaimed out loud. The penetration saint inscription. The moment his words left his mouth, the entire scene burst into a commotion right away. The sword in senior brother Hezong's hand has actually been inscribed with a 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription. As far as I know, there aren't many saint weapons that are inscribed with the 3-star saint inscription. Even in the Merit Pavilion, it would only appear once in a while. Besides, usually, when it appears, it'd be taken by the inner court elder right away. In the sect, higher-ranking officials like the inner court elders and above would usually have the wealth to buy a saint weapon that's inscribed with the 3-star saint inscription. The price of the saint weapon that's inscribed with the 3-star saint inscription usually starts from 1 million merit points. The group of people watching by the side buried their heads in a discussion. The gazes that they looked at Hezong were filled with wonder. That sword seems to be kinda familiar. Somehow, looking at the sword in Hezong's hand, an inner court disciple frowned as though he was trying to remember something. The next instant, his eyes shone brightly as he cried out loud, I remember now. That's the sword of our elder Lu Huan from the inner court. I was once in luck to see Elder Lu Huan using this sword before. A saint weapon that's inscribed with the 3-star saint inscription will never have a duplicate in the Moon Illumination sect. It's obvious that the sword in Hezong's hand is none other than the one that belongs to Elder Lu Huan. Elder Lu Huan's sword? I've never heard of Hezong having any relationship with Elder Lu Huan at all. How come he has Elder Lu Huan's sword with him? Many inner court disciples gaped at Hezong in surprise. Perhaps Hezong has been secretly taken by Elder Lu Huan as his direct disciple. As far as I know, the higher-ranking officials in the sect like to take talented disciples from the outer court in secretly. Only when these outer court disciples have entered the inner court, then their identities will be revealed, an inner court disciple chimed in. I've heard of this before. It looks like Hezong must have been secretly trained by Elder Lu Huan, another inner court disciple added. Lu Huan. The eyes of the spectators lit up right away the moment they heard the discussion between the group of inner court disciples. Has Elder Lu Huan already made his move? Unfortunately, this isn't a death duel. Huang Cheng, the outer court elder, who was at the scene from the start and concealed himself by the side watching the battle, smiled coldly. However, even if it's not a death duel, with the enmity between Elder Lu Huan and Fang Wei, the city governor of Mount Hill City, he would never let go of Duan Lingtian this easily. The enmity between Lu Huan and Fang Wei was not a secret in the Moon Illumination sect. Therefore, after knowing that Duan Lingtian had come from Mount Hill City, Huang Cheng had been waiting to see him face his doom. Huang Cheng was none other than the outer court elder who had lost 300,000 over merit points to Duan Lingtian over a month ago. In this 1 month or so, he had been watching Duan Lingtian, and as long as he dared to leave the sect, he planned to instantly kill him right away. Unfortunately, all this time that he had been watching Duan Lingtian, he had never once left the sect to train at all. Elder Lu Huan, Deng Wei, the outer court deacon, had also grinned. Now that Elder Lu Huan's men have started to make their move, Duan Lingtian will be crippled if he doesn't die. With He Zong's position in the outer court, he'll only suffer a punishment that's neither too light nor too heavy even if he cripples Duan Lingtian. Even though Duan Lingtian was a talented martial cultivator, he would no longer be worthy to the Moon Illumination sect if he was crippled. However, He Zong, on the other hand, would still be very valuable, so without a doubt, the Moon Illumination sect would not punish him that severely. Of course, if He Zong dared to kill Duan Lingtian, then it would be hard for him to escape death too. That was because it was the rule of the Moon Illumination sect. If there was anybody who still lived even after they had killed, the Moon Illumination sect's prestige would be compromised and nobody would give a damn about the sect rules anymore in the future. Duan Lingtian, Yi Man was also present at the scene with anticipation glowing in his eyes. He had also learned about the fact that Duan Lingtian was from Mount Hill City and about the enmity between the inner court's elder Lu Huan in these 3 months that he had entered the Moon Illumination sect. Therefore, he also felt that He Zong would not let Duan Lingtian go this easily. Unlike before, Yi Man now itched for Duan Lingtian to be crippled so that it would be easy for him to kill him once and for all. 3-star Saint Inscription, the Penetration Saint Inscription. Lu Huan's sword. Duan Lingtian's turned slightly grave. It had never crossed his mind that Lu Huan would actually lend his sword to He Zong for the sake of going against him. However, the force of this 3-star Saint Inscription had still baffled him. The last time when he went to the Merit Pavilion, he did not come across any saint weapon that was inscribed with a 3-star Saint Inscription before. Otherwise, he would have bought one for himself. Horizontal Stride. Horizontal Lightning Slice. He Zong, who heard how the onlooking inner court disciple spilled the origins of the sword in his hand, had also made his move again at that moment. When he made his move this time, the target of the sword in his hand was Duan Lingtian's right hand that was holding on to the thousand-mass sword. It was as though he wanted to cut off Duan Lingtian's right arm in just one slice. In the face of He Zong's atrociousness, Duan Lingtian turned grave completely at once. Instantly, he activated his strange pupil right away. A steady flow of spiritual energy continued to accumulate in Duan Lingtian's left eye, causing a tiny whirlpool to appear in his left eye. The speed of the whirlpool twirling kept increasing and in the end, it had almost reached its limit. At this time, he had no choice but to use his strange pupil. As the person ranked the third in the outer sect, He Zong's strength was originally powerful. Adding on with the sword that was inscribed with the 3-star Saint Inscription, the Penetration Saint Inscription, Duan Lingtian had no way of blocking it at all. The strange pupil was activated, spatial manipulation. In that split second, the sword in He Zong's hand was also shifted to one side, away from Duan Lingtian's right arm. Just as Duan Lingtian breathed a sigh of relief, he was shocked to find that the gaze that He Zong was looking at him with seemed to have a hint of revelation in it. However, there was no hint of panic at all, as though he had long known that this would happen. Has he already known about it? Duan Lingtian's heart gave a jolt as an ominous premonition rose in his heart. Duan Lingtian, Feng Fan must have died under your spiritual secret tactic, did he not? Your spiritual secret tactic is indeed remarkable to the point that you can actually move the horizontal lightning slice that I exerted with my entire strength away. However, it's time for all of this to end now. He Zong's true energy voice transmission pierced into his eardrums, resonating with the impending feeling that haunted Duan Lingtian. In the next instant, Duan Lingtian realized that a yellow paper that was densely inscribed with a series of complicated markings had appeared in He Zong's other hand. It's a Dao talisman. When the crowd recognized that it was a Dao talisman, so did Duan Lingtian. Just as the Dao talisman was blasted toward Duan Lingtian's side by inertia, He Zhang, who was glaring deadly at Duan Lingtian, suddenly shouted out loudly, "Appear!" Chapter 1470. Appear. Almost in that instant when He Zhang uttered that, an echo of "appear" resonated in the air. The latter had been announced by Duan Lingtian. When He Zhang's true energy voice transmission entered Duan Lingtian's ear, a sense of ominous premonition rose in his heart right away. He immediately raised his guard up right away. The moment he saw He Zhang bringing out the Dao talisman, he knew why He Zhang was so confident. It turned out that He Zhang wanted to use the Dao talisman against him. Of course, he believed that He Zhang would not dare to kill him using the Dao talisman, but he would definitely dare to cripple him like that. Perhaps, this was He Zhang's real intention after all. Therefore, when He Zhang took the Dao talisman out, Duan Lingtian also grabbed a Dao talisman with a raise of his hand. The second He Zhang's Dao talisman shot towards him after he activated its force with the word, "Appear," Duan Lingtian had also shouted, "Appear," in that gravely dangerous moment to activate the force of the Dao talisman in his own hand. A non-offensive Dao talisman could be activated without the need to throw it out. In the air, the Dao talisman that He Zhang threw out exploded in a split second, transforming into 4 streaks of sharp rays that were extremely fast before charging towards Duan Lingtian's forelimbs as though they were trying to tear his forelimbs off his body forcefully. One could easily imagine that if these 4 streaks of sharp rays got what they were aiming for, Duan Lingtian would have definitely become a limbless cripple. The 4 streaks of sharp rays were so fast that very few of the onlookers could see it clearly. 2-star offensive Dao talisman. Huang Cheng, the outer court elder, was one of the few people who could see the trajectory of the 4 streaks clearly. His eyes lit up right away as he was able to discern that He Zhang had activated a 2-star offensive Dao talisman. The force it contained was equivalent to the attack cast by a Mastery Saint rudiment stage powerhouse. The few other outer court elders turned horrified at once. They had never thought that He Zhang would be this ruthless to the point that he would actually use a Dao talisman to cripple Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, you're destined to become a cripple after today. The outer court deacon, Deng Wei, had a bright smile on his face as though he already could envision Duan Lingtian having his forelimbs ripped off. If Duan Lingtian was crippled, it would no doubt be jubilant news for him and his nephew. However, in the next instant, those who could see the trajectory of the 4 streaks of sharp rays that erupted from the 2-star offensive Dao talisman clearly suddenly froze. In a flash, they noticed that Duan Lingtian had disappeared before their eyes. From the beginning till the end, they had no idea how had he done that. It's a 3-star Divine Strider talisman. Soon, one of the outer court elders exclaimed loudly, being the first to finally realize what was happening. Just now, he had also heard how Duan Lingtian shouted, "Appear," so he realized that he had also activated a Dao talisman. The only Dao talisman that could make Duan Lingtian vanish before his eyes was a Divine Strider talisman that was 3 stars and above. 3 stars was the highest level Dao talisman in the Moon Illumination sect. As a result, he was certain that the one that Duan Lingtian had used was a 3-star Divine Strider talisman. Even though a 3-star Divine Strider talisman cost 300,000 merit points and was too expensive for an ordinary outer court disciple to buy, Duan Lingtian was no ordinary outer court disciple at all. He had earned almost 2 million merit points more than a month ago, so it would not be difficult for him to buy a 3-star Divine Strider talisman. A 3-star Divine Strider talisman. Upon hearing the exclamation of that outer court elder, Huang Cheng and Deng Wei's faces turned grave right away. Impossible. On the training field, He Zhang, who saw how the 4 sharp rays that he released missed their target the instant Duan Lingtian vanished, turned appalled with disbelief in his eyes. Just as He Zhang finally came to a halt after being shot out a distance away due to inertia, an eerily calm voice resonated timely by his ear, "Nothing is impossible." After activating the 3-star Divine Strider talisman, Duan Lingtian, whose speed was equivalent to a Paramount Saint rudiment stage powerhouse, appeared by He Zhang's side like a phantom. Bang! Before the crowd watching the scene, including the few outer court elders, could realize what was happening, He Zhang's entire body had already been sent flying with a powerful explosion. Like an arrow that left the bowstring, he crashed violently onto the ground in distress. Slap! When He Zhang struggled to stand up, a crisp slap resonated in the air while a fiery palm print appeared on his face. After spitting a mouthful of blood that contained pieces of teeth out, He Zhang gritted what was left of his teeth and announced, Duan Lingtian, let's fight honorably if you dare. What kind of bravery is this to make a sneak attack on me? When the onlookers surrounding them heard his words, a strange expression crept upon their faces right away. Did he just ask Duan Lingtian to fight honorably with him? Did he just say that Duan Lingtian made a sneak attack on him? Was he not the one who used the Dao talisman first earlier? He Zhang is really terribly shameless. How dare he have the audacity to say such things? Right now, Duan Lingtian is merely giving him a taste of his own medicine. An inner court disciple swept a glance at He Zhang with disdain and remarked. The other inner court disciples fully agreed with him. Even the group of outer court disciples bobbed their heads to his words as well. All of them felt that He Zhang only had himself to blame. Honorably, do you think you're worthy of doing so? Duan Lingtian's cold snort resonated in the entire training field, but nobody could see a trace of his figure at all. After activating the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, Duan Lingtian's speed was equivalent to a Paramount Saint Rudiment Stage Marshal or a Dao Cultivator. On top of that, it could last for 15 minutes. When he was moving, nobody except the inner court elders from the moon illumination sector above could catch his trail. A few outer court elders could also only catch a residual trace of an image when Duan Lingtian made his move. Other than that, they could not see Duan Lingtian's figure clearly at all. Slap. Another crisp slap resonated in the air. The other side of He Zhang's face turned swollen as well, causing his entire face turn to become like a pig's head. That handsome face of his was nowhere to be seen. Duan Lingtian, how dare you humiliate me in such a way? Do you know who my master is? He Zhang snarled. I'm not interested to know who your master is, but I know that you want to cripple me. In that case, I'll cripple you too. Duan Lingtian's voice was extremely ruthless, frightening He Zhang so much that his face turned pale right away before he hastily called out, I admit my. He wanted to admit his defeat. Unfortunately, before the word, defeat, managed to leave his lips, he had suffered another slap from Duan Lingtian and was forced to swallow the word back down before it even managed to leave his mouth. Following that attempt, every time he wanted to open his mouth to admit his defeat, he would be cut off by Duan Lingtian's slap. In the end, he became completely obedient. Duan Lingtian, if you don't cripple me, I promise that I won't go against you anymore. Under the watchful gaze of others, He Zhang completely succumbed. He was afraid, if he were crippled by Duan Lingtian, he would no longer have any future ahead of him. In the face of this crisis that was related to his future, He Zhang had no choice but to bow his arrogant head. Won't go against me anymore? Duan Lingtian smirked with disdain. Do you think I'll believe you? Right now, he completely held the power of authority in his hand. With a speed that was equivalent to a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse, he could make He Zhang shiver with terror just by his swiftness alone. Among all the martial arts in the world, only speed was the deal-breaker, especially when Duan Lingtian was so ridiculously fast now. I'll swear on it now. Afraid that Duan Lingtian would suddenly attack him, He Zhang hastily broke the skin on his finger and swore on a blood oath, the tribulation oath, that he would no longer go against him in the future. Boom, 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 9 thunderous roars reverberated, deafening the ears as they corresponded with He Zhang's oath. Your resolution is admirable, Duan Lingtian sneered again. However, today, you almost crippled my 4 limbs and even made me waste my precious 3-star Divine Strider Talisman. Do you really think that everything from today can just be cancelled by your oath alone? Taking a deep breath, He Zhang replied, I can compensate you with a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman. It's just reasonable for you to compensate me with a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman. On top of that, if you want to safeguard your 4 limbs, I'd like to see how sincere you are then, Duan Lingtian added nonchalantly. Even though he itched to cripple He Zhang's 4 limbs to give him a taste of his own medicine, the moment he recalled that the chief culprit of this matter was Lu Huan and that nothing would change even if he crippled He Zhang, he dismissed the idea at once and came up with another solution. Extortion. What do you want? He Zhang looked at Duan Lingtian vigilantly. 1 million merit points to buy back your 4 limbs, Duan Lingtian replied indifferently, I think that your 4 limbs are worthy of these many merit points, aren't they? 1 million merit points. The moment the words left Duan Lingtian's mouth, the entire crowd burst into an uproar. My god, this Duan Lingtian actually has such a huge appetite. He actually asked for 1 million merit points from He Zhang straight away. Many inner court disciples clicked their tongues in disapproval. It was obvious that they were shocked by his demands. Senior brother Duan Lingtian asked for so many merit points, but I don't think senior brother He Zhang can take that much out, can he? Many outer court disciples muttered with stunned faces. Even the outer court elders and deacons present at the scene were taken aback by Duan Lingtian's exorbitant demand. 1 million merit points. None of them could even take out that many merit points at one go. Even though He Zhang knew that Duan Lingtian would demand an exorbitant price, it had also never crossed his mind that he would have such a tremendous appetite, asking for 1 million merit points straight away. At once, He Zhang's face turned glum. I don't have that many merit points. Of course, I know you don't have that many merit points. You should just ask the person who asked you to come up with those merit points. I think he has no reason not to pay this sum to buy back your 4 limbs, has he? Duan Lingtian smirked. Even if he doesn't give a damn about the relationship between you and him, he'd still give some face to your master and do something for you for helping him to do this, won't he? Duan Lingtian told He Zhang through true energy voice transmission. Why, you actually know about that? He Zhang was stunned. It turned out that Duan Lingtian had already long known about his background. At that moment, a sense of being thwarted rose in his heart right away. Uncle, it looks like you'll have to sacrifice a little this time. Right now, He Zhang's face was filled with despair and a wry smile. Swear that you'll hand 1 million merit points and 1 3-star Divine Strider talisman to me by tomorrow. If you don't, you'll be punished by the thunder penalty till death claims you. Duan Lingtian cast an icy glance at He Zhang. Chapter 1471. Duan Lingtian only let go of He Zhang after he had sworn using the Tribulation Oath, the 9 Heavenly Tribulation. This speed is really amazing. Duan Lingtian, aided by the 3-star Divine Strider talisman that granted him the speed of a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse, began to stroll around the outer court after He Zhang swore an oath and left. He was so fast to the point that the outer court elders could barely catch any trace of his movement at all. However, the 3-star Divine Strider talisman's effect had a time limit. After strolling around the outer court for a while, the effect wore off and Duan Lingtian reverted to his original state. Meanwhile, the news of Duan Lingtian defeating He Zhang had also spread to the inner court like a typhoon, greatly raising Duan Lingtian's fame once again. Although He Zhang was only an outer court disciple, he was ranked 66th in the 9 sect alliances, Earth ranking. His fame had even surpassed some of the ordinary inner court elders in the Moon Illumination sect. However, someone like that was defeated by Duan Lingtian, an outer court disciple who had just entered the sect slightly more than 3 months ago. Duan Lingtian had also successfully replaced He Zhang and ranked 66th in the Earth ranking. He Zhang, on the other hand, had traded places with Duan Lingtian and was ranked 99th in the Earth ranking. This position originally belonged to Feng Fan. Duan Lingtian's fame spread to the inner court and caused many of the inner court disciples to click their tongues in disapproval. All along, those who came from the city governor's estate of Mount Hill usually have a bad ending when faced with Lu Huan's men. However, this Duan Lingtian has placed Elder Lu Huan's men in a disadvantageous position. He's really not a simple person. Many inner court disciples who were privy to the dispute between inner court elder Lu Huan and the city governor of Mount Hill City clicked their tongues as they discussed this. The news of He Zhang possibly being Lu Huan's disciple had also begun to spread. When all was said and done, Lu Huan had been greatly embarrassed. In Lu Huan's residence in the inner court, smack! A furious Lu Huan raised his hand and slapped down on the stone table before him, shattering it. A 3-star Divine Strider talisman and 1 million merit points. He's got a huge appetite. Isn't he afraid of bursting? His appetite has been huge all along. I heard he had earned almost 2 million merit points more than a month ago. He Zhang sighed. Uncle, I know you feel dissatisfied about this matter, but I've already made an oath, He Zhang reminded as he looked at Lu Huan. Little Zhang, don't worry. I won't make you break your oath. It's just a 3-star Divine Strider talisman and 1 million merit points, right? I still have that much at least. Lu Huan took a deep breath, his expression turned warmer when he looked at He Zhang. However, the rage in the depth of his eyes did not lessen at all. However, that Duan Lingtian is really courageous. How dare he beat you up to this extent? Looking at both sides of He Zhang's face that were still swollen, Lu Huan asked furiously, Little Zhang, don't tell me you going to let this go. Uncle, I know what you mean, but I made an oath to not go against him in the future. Due to this reason, please don't put me in a difficult spot anymore, Uncle. I don't want to be struck to death by the 9 heavenly tribulation. Naturally, He Zhang knew what Lu Huan meant. There was no doubt he was trying to drag him into this mess so they could oppose Duan Lingtian together. At this moment, he regretted complying with Lu Huan before this. Otherwise, he would not have to suffer so much humiliation now. Although he did not suffer any material loss, the humiliation was more than enough to make his position in the outer court decline. I know you've made an oath, but Vice Sect Leader Zhang, Lu Huan's eyes shone brightly for a split second. However, he was interrupted by He Zhang before he could finish his sentence. Uncle, whatever Master wants to do is not up to me to decide. Since I've sworn that I won't go against Duan Lingtian, naturally, I won't fan the fire in front of Master as well. Otherwise, I'll be considered as violating the tribulation oath, and I might get struck by the lightning penalty. You don't have to say anything. I'll inform Vice Sect Leader Zhang about this matter. I think he won't let go of someone who had humiliated his direct disciple. A sneer could be seen on Lu Huan's face when he reached the end of his sentence. He Zhang glanced at Lu Huan indifferently and did not say anything. If this was the case, he would not be considered as going against his oath. Uncle, the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman and 1 million merit points, He Zhang reminded Lu Huan as he looked at him. It was uncertain if he did it intentionally. I'll transfer 1.4 million merit points to you, go and buy the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman from the Merit Pavilion. As for the extra 100,000 merit points, take it as my compensation to you. After all, I was the one who asked you to battle Duan Lingtian. Lu Huan took out his crystal card and transferred 1.4 million merit points to He Zhang. All right, He Zhang nodded. He was satisfied with how sensible Lu Huan was. After He Zhang left, Lu Huan's face turned grave immediately. 1.4 million merit points had vanished just like that. It would be a lie if he said he did not feel any pain at all. His entire wealth only amounted to slightly more than 1.6 million merit points. In just a blink of an eye, he had lost almost 90% of it. Duan Lingtian, Lu Huan, will find it difficult to eat or sleep if you don't die. Lu Huan muttered to himself as his eyes gleamed coldly. In the next instant, Lu Huan began to rack his brain to come up with a solution that would rid him of Duan Lingtian once and for all. The next morning, He Zhang went to look for Duan Lingtian. Not bad, you really kept your word. After receiving the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman and 1 million merit point from He Zhang, Duan Lingtian nodded his head in satisfaction. He Zhang smiled wryly when he heard his words. Could he not keep his word? He had sworn using the tribulation oath, the 9 heavenly tribulation, he would not live if he did not keep his promise. After He Zhang passed the Dao Talisman and merit points to Duan Lingtian, he did not stay any longer and left immediately. Although he had sworn to not go against Duan Lingtian anymore, it did not mean he could face him with a calm heart. At this moment, he did not want to have anything to do with Duan Lingtian at all. To him, Duan Lingtian was no different from a nightmare. It's a good thing I bought a 3-star Divine Strider when I went to the Merit Pavilion previously. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for me to escape the critical situation yesterday. The moment Duan Lingtian recalled yesterday's incident, he still felt a trace of fear. If it was not for the 3-star Divine Strider Talisman, he would not have been able to dodge the offensive Dao Talisman that He Zhang threw out yesterday. That offensive Dao Talisman was a 2-star offensive Dao Talisman. When the energy contained inside it exploded, it was comparable to the attack of a Mastery Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. Looks like I can't save my merit points and not buy the Dao Talisman. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath before he left his little courtyard and headed to the Merit Pavilion of Moon Illumination Sect. Unlike his previous trip to the Merit Pavilion, most of the inner court disciples there recognized him this time. When Duan Lingtian arrived at the Merit Pavilion, he did not stay on the first level of the Merit Pavilion, but he went up the stairs immediately. His destination was the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion. The 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion was where Dao Talismans were sold. When he passed by the 2nd level of the Merit Pavilion, Duan Lingtian noticed the person on duty was not Elder Fanggon, so he went up to the 3rd level. Duan Lingtian, the people on duty on the 3rd level of the Merit Pavilion were the 2 inner court deacons from his last trip. When they saw Duan Lingtian, their gazes turned a little complicated. They had also heard of yesterday's news. He had defeated He Zhang, the Earth Rankings powerhouse, who might be a disciple of Inner Court Elder Lu Huan, and extorted 1 million merit points and a 3-star Divine Strider Talisman from him. When they heard of Duan Lingtian's thug-like behavior, they instantly became speechless. It seemed like no one with such a thug-like behavior existed before in the history of Moon Illumination sect. Duan Lingtian nodded his head at the two people before taking out his spatial ring and entering the third level of the Merit Pavilion. This time, apart from buying a 3-star Divine Strider talisman, he had also bought 2 3-star Golden Energy talisman. He wanted to buy offensive Dao talismans, he did not see any 3-star offensive Dao talismans. In the end, he bought 2 2-star offensive Dao talismans instead. Currently, he had 2 3-star Divine Strider talismans, 2 3-star Golden Energy talismans and 2 2-star offensive Dao talismans in his possession. Duan Lingtian, who had spent 900,000 merit points, could not help but ask when he was at the entrance of the third level of the Merit Pavilion, "Excuse me, I wonder why there's no 3-star offensive Dao talismans in the third level of the Merit Pavilion." Once a 3-star offensive Dao talisman was activated, its strength was equivalent to the full attack of a martial or Dao cultivator at the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage. Naturally, it was only equivalent to an ordinary martial or Dao cultivator at the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage. There's no 3-star offensive Dao talismans in our Moon Illumination sect. One of the inner court deacons shook his head. Among all the Dao talismans, it's most difficult to draw offensive Dao talismans. Although offensive Dao talismans will vanish in just a blink of an eye, its value is not something that the Divine Strider talismans and the Golden Energy talismans can compare to. If you want to buy 3-star offensive Dao talismans, you'll have to go to the 9 Sect Alliances headquarters, the other inner court deacon chimed in. The 9 Sect Alliances headquarters. Duan Lingtian was stunned. The 9 Sect Alliances headquarters is located in the biggest city in the 9 Sect Alliances district, Hanyang City. If you want to buy a 3-star offensive Dao talisman, you'll have to go to Hanyang City, the inner court deacon who first spoke up replied. Alright, Duan Lingtian nodded before asking again, do both of you know where Elder Fang Gan lives? After learning about the location of Elder Fang Gan's residence from the 2 inner court deacons, Duan Lingtian left the Merit Pavilion and headed toward the inner court. This was his first time entering the inner court ever since he came to the Moon Illumination sect. The biggest difference between the inner and outer courts was its cultivating environment. The intensity of the heaven and earth spirit energy was far richer compared to the outer court. Moreover, the heaven and earth spirit energy would only get denser the deeper one entered the inner court. It's obvious the Moon Illumination sect's 7th grade Saint Stone's reserve lies in the center of Moon Illumination sect's estate. It was not difficult for Duan Lingtian figure this out. The heaven and earth spirit energy would become richer the closer it was to the Saint Stone's reserve. Apart from that, the inner court was also a lot bigger than the outer court. It stretched out as far as the eyes could see. Following the 2 inner court deacons' direction, Duan Lingtian arrived at the eastern district of the inner court. The residences of the inner court elders were located here. There were many big mansions and statues of great beasts here. Chapter 1472. Duan Lingtian stopped a passing inner court disciple and politely asked, "Senior brother, do you know which mansion belongs to Elder Fang Gan?" "It's that one," the inner court disciple said as he pointed toward a mansion not far away. "Thank you, senior brother." Duan Lingtian quickly thanked him and made his way to the mansion. An outer court disciple is looking for Elder Fang Gan. The inner court disciple was slightly surprised after he saw the outer court disciple identity token on Duan Lingtian's waist. In the Moon Illumination sect, the gap between an outer court disciple and an inner court elder was like an impassable gulf. Logically speaking, there should not be any interaction between the two. Duan Lingtian was stopped by an old man when he arrived at Fang Gan's mansion. "Senior, is this Elder Fang Gan's mansion?" Duan Lingtian asked politely as he looked at the skinny old man standing before him. "Why are you looking for my young master?" The old man responded with a question. "Young master?" Duan Lingtian was stunned by the old man's words before he realized the young master in question was Fang Gan. "Can you please help me pass on a message? Just say that an outer court disciple, Duan Lingtian, wishes to see Elder Fang Gan," Duan Lingtian said with a smile. "You're Duan Lingtian?" The old man's eyes lit up when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. It was obvious he had heard about Duan Lingtian. He immediately looked at Duan Lingtian's waist. More accurately, he was looking at the outer court disciple identity token that was hung on Duan Lingtian's waist. "Young master has given an order to bring you in if you come looking for him," the old man said as he led Duan Lingtian inside. Duan Lingtian did not expect Elder Fang Gan to be so attentive. He felt a little moved. Following the old man's lead, Duan Lingtian saw Elder Fang Gon in the backyard of the mansion. Elder Fang Gon was solemnly watering the vegetable garden in his backyard. He was so engrossed in his task that he even failed to notice their arrival. "Young master, Duan Lingtian's here," the old man said respectfully as he looked at Fang Gon. "Duan Lingtian." Elder Fang Gon immediately stopped what he was doing when he heard that and turned around to look at Duan Lingtian. "It's really you, little fellow, what now? Since you came looking for me, is there anything I can help you with?" Fang Gon asked with a smile. "Indeed, there's something I need your help with, Elder Fang Gon." Duan Lingtian nodded. As the saying went, one would not visit a Buddhist temple for no reason. He would not have looked for Fang Gon for no reason at all. While Duan Lingtian and Fang Gon were talking, the old man who led Duan Lingtian in quietly retreated. "Previously, I told you to come to me if you need help. I'll definitely help you if it's within my power." Fang Gon invited Duan Lingtian to sit in front of a stone table and poured him a cup of tea. "Thank you, Elder Fang Gon." Duan Lingtian thanked him before he directly stated the purpose of his visit. "Elder Fang Gon, I came to ask you something today. Within the Moon Illumination sect, are there any saint inscription masters who can inscribe a 3-star saint inscription on saint weapons?" "Yes." Fang Gon nodded. "In our Moon Illumination sect, most of the senior officials in the sect that rank above inner court elders have a saint weapon with a 3-star saint inscription. All these saint weapons came from Elder Bai Li." "Elder Bai Li?" Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. "Elder Bai Li is the only 3-star saint inscription master in our Moon Illumination sect. Moreover, he's also a revered elder of the Moon Illumination sect. His status is on par with the vice sect leader. Even the sect leader and several saint stage powerhouses are courteous toward him when they see him because of his special identity as a saint inscription master. In that regard, even the few vice sect leaders in the Moon Illumination sect cannot compare to him," Fang Gon said. Duan Lingtian was not surprised by this. A 3-star saint inscription master would receive special treatment even in a 6th-rate force, let alone a 7th-rate force like the Moon Illumination sect. "I don't know if it's possible for me to ask Elder Bai Li to help me inscribe a saint inscription on a saint weapon?" Duan Lingtian asked after he took a deep breath. He had an expectant expression on his face as he looked at Fang Gon. This was the purpose of his visit. Ever since he saw the power of Lu Huan's sword that was inscribed with a 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription, he wanted to inscribe the penetration saint inscription on his sun-shooting bow as well. If it was inscribed on his bow, the arrow shots with his sun-shooting bow would have a powerful penetrative ability. One shot was sufficient to penetrate everything. However, even if there were saint inscription masters in the Dao Martial Saint land who could inscribe a saint inscription on the sun-shooting bow, Duan Lingtian did not think any of the inscription masters in Moon Illumination sect would be able to do it. That was why Duan Lingtian thought to inscribe the penetration saint inscription on the bowstring of the sun-shooting bow. Although it would still be challenging to inscribe on the bowstring of sun-shooting bow that was made from the vein of a 5-clawed devil dragon, it would still be simpler than inscribing on the sun-shooting bow itself. Inscribing saint inscription. What kind of saint inscription would you like Elder Bai Li to inscribe? Fang Gon asked curiously. "The penetration saint inscription," Duan Lingtian said bluntly. "The penetration saint inscription, the 3-star saint inscription on Lu Huan's sword." Fang Gon knew the saint inscription on Lu Huan's sword was the penetration saint inscription. "Yes." Duan Lingtian nodded. "The strongest saint-grade martial tactic I'm cultivating is archery. If I can inscribe the penetration saint inscription on my archery set, the power of my arrows will increase greatly because of its penetrative ability. Once the penetration saint inscription is activated after the inscription, it'll certainly increase your strength by leaps and bounds," Fang Gon said. "However, it won't be easy to ask Elder Bai Li to help you inscribe a 3-star saint inscription. Elder Bai Li's willingness to inscribe 3-star saint inscriptions is dependent on his mood. Therefore, even in the inner court, not every inner court elder has a saint weapon with a 3-star saint inscription." Duan Lingtian was mentally prepared for this. Those who are highly skilled usually had their own quirks. "Since you came to the inner court, I'll bring you to visit Elder Bai Li. I'll try my best to convince him, but I can't guarantee that he'll agree to it." Fang Gon reminded Duan Lingtian in advance. "I understand." Duan Lingtian nodded. "In that case, let's go to Elder Bai Li's mansion now," Fang Gon said as he stood up. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was pleased that Fang Gon cared enough about his affair to immediately bring him to see Elder Bai Li. After leaving Fang Gan's mansion, Duan Lingtian learned more about Elder Bai Li from Fang Gan. He found out that Elder Bai Li's full name was Bai Li Hong, and he entered the Moon Illumination sect 30 years ago. When he joined the Moon Illumination sect, he was already a Paramount Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse and was just a step away from entering the Saint stage. However, after so many years, he was still at the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage. It's really too difficult to break through to the Saint stage. I've broken through to the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage 20 years ago, but I still can't cross the last step. Fang Gan could not help but sigh when he spoke about Bai Li Hong's cultivation base. Similar to Bai Li Hong, his cultivation base was stuck at the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage. He was unable to make a breakthrough and enter the Saint stage as well. Although the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage and the Saint stage was merely a step apart, the difference in strength was a world apart. The weakest Saint stage powerhouse could easily kill a dozen Paramount Saint Rudiment stage powerhouses who were working together. There was a saying in the Tao Martial Saint land, before entering the Saint Rudiment stage, one is like a chicken or a dog. Once one enters the Saint Rudiment stage, they're like chickens and dogs that have ascended to heaven. That clearly described the difference between someone at the Saint stage and someone who was not at the Saint stage. Naturally, there was also a difference in strength between people who were at the peak of the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage. In Fang Gan's words, he was not Bai Li Hong's match. The Saint weapon in Bai Li Hong's hands was an Earth-rank primitive Saint weapon inscribed with 3 3-star Saint inscriptions. It was also the #1 Saint weapon in the Moon Illumination sect. With that Saint weapon, Bai Li Hong's strength was comparable to the few Vice sect leaders in the Moon Illumination sect. It should be noted that the few Vice sect leaders in the sect already had half their foot in the Saint stage. They had the most potential in the sect to break through to the Saint stage. All they lacked to make a breakthrough was an opportunity. Half Saint stage referred to those who were in between the peak of the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage and the Saint stage. They were stronger than those at the peak of the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage but weaker than those at the Saint stage. A Saint weapon inscribed with 3 3-star Saint inscriptions. After hearing about Bai Li Hong's Saint weapon, Duan Lingtian could not help but stick his tongue out. So excessive. Duan Lingtian, even if Elder Bai Li is willing to inscribe the 3-star Saint inscription, the penetration Saint inscription, for you, he'll probably want millions of merit points as payment, Fang Gan reminded Duan Lingtian before they arrived at Bai Li Hong's mansion. I understand. Duan Lingtian nodded. He was mentally prepared for that as well. Elder Bai Li, I still have 1.1 million merit points in my hands. If I don't have enough, can you please borrow me some? Duan Lingtian looked at Fang Gan and said, I'll return it to you as soon as I can. This is a small matter, Fang Gan said with a slight smile. After the people of Bai Li Hong's mansion notified him of their arrival, Duan Lingtian and Fang Gan were led into the main hall of the spacious mansion. A middle-aged man with stubbles on his cheeks stood in the main hall, frowning as though he was deep in thought. Elder Bai Li, Elder Fang Gan's here, the person who led Duan Lingtian and Fang Gan in said to the middle-aged man. He's Bai Li Hong. Duan Lingtian's eyes instantly brightened as he stared intently at the middle-aged man. You can retreat for now. The middle-aged man unfurrowed his brows and waved dismissively. Then, he looked at Fang Gan. Elder Fang Gan, what brings you here today? Elder Bai Li. Fang Gan did not dare to dawdle in front of Bai Li Hong. He bowed slightly as he pointed to Duan Lingtian and introduced him. This is Duan Lingtian from the outer court. The reason I came today is to bring him here. Chapter 1473. Duan Lingtian. When Bai Li Hong heard Fang Gan's words, his eyes immediately shifted to Duan Lingtian. You're that Duan Lingtian who caused the commotions in the outer court within 3 months of joining the sect. Duan Lingtian greets Elder Bai Li. At this time, Duan Lingtian also bowed at Bai Li Hong. Elder Fang Gan must value you since you're able to get him to bring you here. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Bai Li Hong asked without beating around the bush. Elder Bai Li, I came to ask for your help in inscribing the penetration Saint inscription on my Saint weapon, Duan Lingtian said bluntly as well. The penetration Saint inscription. Bai Li Hong shook his head after hearing that. If you came for the penetration Saint inscription, I'm afraid you came for naught. I have to expand a lot of effort to inscribe a 3-star Saint inscription, that's why it depends on my mood if I want to inscribe a 3-star Saint inscription or not. Did it depend on his mood? When Duan Lingtian heard that, the corner of his mouth twitched involuntarily. He was truly a highly skilled person with his quirk. Elder Bai Li, it seems like you're worried you can't inscribe a 3-star saint inscription on my saint weapon. If that's the case, rest assured, I've decided to let you inscribe on the bowstring of my bow instead of the bow, Duan Lingtian casually said as he looked at Bai Li Hong. Do you think you'll be able to goad me into agreeing? Bai Li Hong said as he looked at Duan Lingtian calmly. A hint of disdain could be heard in his tone. Fang Gan, who stood at the side, smiled wryly. He thought Duan Lingtian was being too rash. Even he could see through his goading tactic, let alone Elder Bai Li. Elder Bai Li, why don't we make a bet? Duan Lingtian said, blinking, as a smile slowly formed on his face. What bet? Bai Li Hong asked faintly. If you can inscribe one saint inscription on my saint weapon bow, even if it's merely a 1-star saint inscription, then it's my loss. If I lose, I'll give you 1 million merit points, how's that? Duan Lingtian said as he looked at Bai Li Hong. 1 million merit points. Duan Lingtian's generosity shocked Fang Gan. Even Bai Li Hong was shocked as he shot Duan Lingtian another glance. Are you sure? Although Bai Li Hong, as the only 3-star saint inscription master in the Moon Illumination sect, had no shortage of merit points, he had no reason to reject Duan Lingtian's bet since he insisted on giving away 1 million merit points. Even if it's a heaven-rank saint weapon, he was confident he would still be able to inscribe it. It did not cross his mind that he might not be able to do so on Duan Lingtian's saint weapon. Elder Bai Li, is that a promise? Duan Lingtian asked with a smile. That's right. Bai Li Hong nodded. Elder Bai Li, I haven't stated the price you'll have to pay if you lose, but you're agreeing to it so quickly. Duan Lingtian asked, surprised. I won't lose. Bai Li Hong was very confident. He would not dare to speak if it was something else, but he was confident in regards to the saint inscription Dao. Although Elder Bai Li is very confident, I'll still have to state the price you'll have to pay if you lose. If you really can't inscribe a saint inscription on my saint weapon bow, please help me inscribe the penetration saint inscription on the bowstring of my saint weapon for free, Duan Lingtian said as he looked at Bai Li Hong. No problem, Bai Li Hong promised immediately. Elder Bai Li, I haven't finished speaking, Duan Lingtian added. Duan Lingtian, don't reach for a yard after taking an inch. Bai Li Hong said with a frown. 1 million merit points was almost equivalent to the value of a penetration saint inscription. He was somewhat displeased when he saw Duan Lingtian intended to add to the bet even though he did not think he would lose. Duan Lingtian ignored Bai Li Hong's words and continued saying, if Elder Bai Li you lose, in addition to 1 free penetration saint inscription, you'll have to teach me the saint inscription Dao for a month without holding anything back. After hearing Duan Lingtian's words, not only was Fang Gan stunned, even Bai Li Hong was stunned. This Duan Lingtian was interested in the saint inscription. That's all, Elder Bai Li, are you still willing to bet? Duan Lingtian asked with a smile as he looked at Bai Li Hong. Humph, since you want to give me your merit points, there's no reason for me to reject it. Bai Li Hong snorted, take your saint weapon out. I want to see what kind of saint weapon can give you this kind of confidence. I'm not bragging, but even if it's a heaven-rank saint weapon, I'll still be able to inscribe saint inscription on it. Heaven-rank saint weapon. When he heard Bai Li Hong's words, Duan Lingtian could not help but chuckle inwardly. A heaven-rank saint weapon was nothing in front of the sun-shooting bow. Under the watchful eyes of Bai Li Hong and Fang Gan, Duan Lingtian took the sun-shooting bow out and presented it to both of them. Fang Gan's mouth twitched when he saw the rusty sun-shooting bow. This saint weapon did not look like it would present any challenge to Elder Bai Li at all. However, Bai Li Hong's attitude was completely different from Fang Gan. As the saying went, only insiders know the ropes. Outsiders are only here for the ride. With just a glance, Bai Li Hong saw how extraordinary Duan Lingtian's bow was. Setting aside the bow, just the bowstring alone was better than any human-rank saint weapons or earth-rank saint weapons. Bai Li Hong took the sun-shooting bow as he stared intently at the bowstring of the sun-shooting bow. He gasped and asked, that's dragon tendon. Dragon tendon. Fang Gan was shocked by Bai Li Hong's words. Although there were plenty of rumors about dragons in the history of Dao Martial Saint Land, as far as the world is concerned, dragons were a legendary existence. However, Bai Li Hong just said that the bowstring of Duan Lingtian's bow was made from dragon tendon. Elder Bai Li, you recognize this? Duan Lingtian looked surprised. He did not expect Bai Li Hong to recognize the dragon tendon. It should be noted that this was the first time someone had identified the bowstring of the sun-shooting bow as dragon tendon ever since he entered the Moon Illumination sect. In the Dao martial saint land, there's no shortage of bows with dragon tendon as bowstrings, the poorest among those are also heaven-rank primitive saint weapons. It seems like your saint weapon is also a heaven-rank saint weapon, Bai Li Hong muttered. Heaven-rank saint weapon. Fang Gan was dumbfounded. He did not expect Duan Ling Tian to take a heaven-rank saint weapon out. It should be noted that even the Moon Illumination sect did not own a heaven-rank saint weapon. Even the 9 sect alliances might not necessarily own a heaven-rank saint weapon. Heaven-rank saint weapon. Duan Ling Tian did not respond when he heard Bai Li Hong's words. Although it's difficult for me to inscribe a saint inscription on a heaven-rank primitive saint weapon, it's not impossible, you'll definitely lose this bet. Bai Li Hong unilaterally announced his victory as he looked at Duan Ling Tian. Chapter 1474. Elder Bai Li, isn't it too soon for you to be saying this? Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes and smiled. Humph. Bai Li Hong snorted softly and ignored Duan Ling Tian. He raised his arm and retrieved an extremely fine iron stylus. It was the inscription pen Dao Talisman Masters and Saint Inscription Masters used in the Dao Martial Saint Land. There were 2 ends on the inscription pen. One end was similar to an ordinary Chinese brush while the other end was pointed. The inscription pen that emitted a cold aura was so fine that it was like a big needle. It was obvious that it was made from extraordinary materials. In the Dao Martial Saint Land, inscription pens were categorized into classes. The inscription pen in Bai Li Hong's hand was top-rated even in the entire Dao Martial Saint Land. His inscription pen could mark a heaven-rank primitive saint weapon. Logically speaking, in the Dao Martial Saint Land, an inscription pen like that should not be in the hands of a 3-star saint inscription master. Even 6-star saint inscription masters might not necessarily own an inscription pen like this, not to mention a 3-star saint inscription master. The reason why Bai Li Hong owned such an inscription pen was due to a fortuitous encounter. He had chanced upon the inheritance of a 7-star saint inscription master. The inscription pen was also left behind by the 7-star saint inscription master. Due to that fortuitous encounter and a lot of hard work, he finally managed to become a saint inscription master. Holding Duan Ling Tian's sun-shooting bow in one hand and the inscription pen in the other, Bai Li Hong looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked, I don't have to try inscribing a saint inscription. If my inscription pen makes a mark on your saint weapon bow, I should be able to inscribe on it, you can't deny that, right? Of course, I won't deny that. Duan Ling Tian said with certainty, as long as Elder Bai Li manages to leave a mark on my bow, I'll consider it as my loss. I'll admit defeat. Very well. Bai Li Hong nodded, satisfied. Under Duan Ling Tian and Fang Gan's gaze, he sent true energy into the inscription pen and pointed the sharp end of the inscription pen at the sun-shooting bow with lightning speed. The 2 ends of the inscription pen were peculiar as well. The sharp end looked like a pointed cone used by saint inscription masters to inscribe on saint weapons. As for the other end, it looked like a Chinese brush, and it was for Dao Talisman Masters to draw Dao Talismans on talisman papers. An inscription pen was used by both Saint Inscription Masters and Dao Talisman Masters. Naturally, Saint Inscription Masters generally did not use the other end. Fang Gan stared unblinkingly at the scene before him. He was curious who would end up having the last laugh. It was not that he did not trust Bai Li Hong, but Duan Ling Tian's confidence swayed his heart. After all, Duan Ling Tian did not suffer a loss at all ever since he entered the Moon Illumination sect. He was uncertain if this time would be an exception. Duan Ling Tian looked on calmly. Although he did not know how extraordinary the inscription pen in Bai Li Hong's hands was, he had almost blind confidence in the sun-shooting bow. What a joke! The sun-shooting bow was made of special materials that could be refined into a celestial supreme treasure. It was definitely not an easy task to leave a mark on it. At least, Duan Ling Tian did not think that Bai Li Hong was capable of leaving any mark on it. Shoo! The inscription pen landed like a lightning, the true energy entwined around it looked like little green snakes. At a second glance, it also looked like bolts of green lightning moving around the inscription pen. Chang! When the inscription pen landed on the sun-shooting bow, it made a cacophonous sound. Meanwhile, Bai Li Hong focused his gaze as he shook his hand that was holding the inscription pen, fully intending on leaving a mark on the sun-shooting bow. However, the results left him dumbfounded when he moved his hands. He noticed there was no mark on the bow in his hand. How's this possible? With my inscription pen, I should be able to leave a mark even on a heaven-rank primitive saint weapon. Bai Li Hong took a deep breath. He refused to believe this and tried again. Unfortunately, the result was the same. His inscription pen failed to leave any mark on the sun-shooting bow. There's no trace of a mark at all. Fang Gan was also stunned. He glanced at Duan Lingtian with conflicted emotions after he recovered from the shock. Elder Bai Li, you won't go back on your words, will you? Duan Lingtian asked with a smile. Bai Li Hong did not answer Duan Lingtian's question and asked with a dignified expression on his face, what kind of saint weapon is this? Is it one of the super saint weapons in the rumored 10 great saint weapons ranking in the Dao Martial Saint Land? No, it's not. Duan Lingtian shook his head and said faintly, this is a saint weapon that my master asked his friend to custom make for me 20 years ago. It's definitely not one of the 10 greatest super saint weapons in the 10 great saint weapons ranking. With his words, Duan Lingtian created a fake master for himself. Your master's not a simple man since he has a friend who can refine such an outstanding saint weapon. Bai Li Hong's face turned solemn when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Fang Gan heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he did not open his mouth and ask Duan Lingtian to be his disciple. Otherwise, he would have embarrassed himself. No wonder he only addressed the city governor of Mount Hill City as teacher and not master. As it turns out, he already has an extremely powerful master, Fang Gan thought to himself. It was not difficult for Fang Gan to come up with that conclusion. He knew about Bai Li Hong's capability. Based on Bai Li Hong's words, he would be able to inscribe on a heaven-ranked saint weapon. The fact that Bai Li Hong had suspected Duan Lingtian's saint weapon to be one of the 10 greatest super saint weapons in the 10 great saint weapons ranking undoubtedly proved that his saint weapon was comparable to the super saint weapons. As for the connection between Duan Lingtian and the city governor of Mount Hill City, he had only learned about it recently. I don't know about that. In the face of a solemn Bai Li Hong, Duan Lingtian shook his head and muttered unhappily, that old man isn't a competent master at all. He always leaves me alone, saying it's to train me. I've been deceived. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was just making up a story. However, it became a different matter when Bai Li Hong and Fang Gan heard this. If there was no sun-shooting bow, they might not necessarily believe Duan Lingtian's words. However, with the sun-shooting bow that was comparable to a super saint weapon, they could not help but believe Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, you're lucky to be accepted by such a master. It's a blessing. How can you say you've been deceived? Fang Gan shook his head. I was thinking what kind of person can cultivate such a monstrous freak like you. I didn't think you would have such a mysterious and powerful master behind you, Fang Gan said. Bai Li Hong nodded in agreement as he looked at Duan Lingtian and said, Duan Lingtian, I admit defeat. 3 days later, you may return to retrieve your saint weapon. As for learning the saint inscription Dao, we'll start in 3 days. Although he had no way of inscribing the sun-shooting bow, he was very confident in inscribing the bowstring. This was because he could not figure out what the sun-shooting bow made from. However, he had already identified the bowstring as dragon tendon. Dragon tendon, with my inscription pen, I'll still be able to inscribe even if it's the dragon tendon of a 5-clawed divine dragon. Bai Li Hong was filled with confidence. In the inheritance he obtained from the 7-star Saint Inscription Master, there was more than just Saint Inscription Dao, there were also a lot of secrets such as the secrets of the dragon clans. He even knew that 5-clawed divine dragons were the strongest in the dragon clans in the Dao Martial Saint Land. According to the message left behind by the 7-star Saint Inscription Master, the inscription pen he left behind could even inscribe on the toughest part of a 5-clawed divine dragon's body, the dragon scale, let alone the tendon. However, Bai Li Hong did not know the dragon tendon in his hands belonged to a 5-clawed divine dragon. After receiving Bai Li Hong's promise, a smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face, and he hurriedly thanked him. Thank you, Elder Bai Li. After thanking him, Duan Lingtian looked at Bai Li Hong and Fang Gan again and said solemnly, I have another favor to ask from Elder Bai Li and Elder Fang Gan. Please don't tell anyone about my bow. I don't want to be everyone's target. It was highly likely that many people would covet and try to snatch his sun-shooting bow if they find out his bow was comparable to a super saint weapon. I'm not so foolish, Bai Li Hong said faintly. Naturally, he did not finish his sentence out loud. Even if he was foolish, he still would not dare to do that because it might offend Duan Lingtian's master. Although Bai Li Hong could not confirm the existence of Duan Lingtian's master, he would rather err on the side of caution. Don't worry. Fang Gan's reply was even more direct. Since Bai Li Hong intended to begin helping Duan Lingtian to inscribe the 3-star saint inscription, penetration saint inscription, on the bowstring of the sun-shooting bow, Duan Lingtian and Fang Gan did not stay on. After they bade Bai Li Hong farewell, they left his mansion together. Fang Gan was curious about Duan Lingtian's fake master. During their journey back, he asked Duan Lingtian questions and he responded accordingly. He had made up a fake master as a protective measure. From the moment he decided to show the extraordinary sun-shooting bow, he had already planned to make up a story about a fake master that would make Bai Li Hong and Fang Gan wary so it would deter them from snatching his bow away. Although Bai Li Hong and Fang Gan did not seem like cunning people, he had to be extra careful. As the saying went, one might know a person's face but not his heart. He was more guarded than other people since he had lived twice. Duan Lingtian wanted to change the topic so he looked at Fang Gan and asked inquisitively, "Elder Fang Gan, when I went to see you, that senior in your mansion addressed you as young master. Has he been with you for a long time?" Chapter 1475. Yes, he has been with me for a long time. Fang Gan nodded as he reminisced. More than 100 years ago when I was younger, I'm the young master of a notable family in the area ruled by the Moon Illumination sect, the Fang clan. He's the martial apprentice by my side who sparred with me. After that, he accompanied me to the Moon Illumination sect until today. Fang Gan had a gentle expression on his face when he spoke. Duan Lingtian nodded. It was almost exactly like what he had thought. Duan Lingtian left the inner court and returned to the outer court after rejecting Fang Gan's invitation to stay. Once he arrived near the independent courtyard he was residing in, Duan Lingtian saw a familiar figure standing outside his independent courtyard. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he saw the figure. He smiled as he greeted that person, Shanghu. Senior brother Duan. Shanghu turned around when he heard Duan Lingtian's greeting. He had an excited expression on his face. I didn't expect so much to happen during the time I was in closed-door cultivation, Duan Lingtian, you're too powerful. Now our Mount Hill city really has something to be proud of. It was obvious Shanghu had heard about Duan Lingtian's recent accomplishment after he came out from his closed-door cultivation. Killing Feng Fan, and defeating an inner court disciple, He Zhang. When he first heard about it, he was so stunned that he did not react for a long time. Duan Lingtian remained calm in the face of Shanghu's excitement, he only smiled faintly. Shanghu, the last time I visited you, you were in closed-door cultivation. Since you're out now, I should return the merit points teacher gave you, Duan Lingtian said as he lifted his arm and retrieved his crystal card. Senior brother, you can keep the merit points and use it for yourself. Shanghu grinned. Are you sure you want me to keep it? Are you sure you don't want to borrow the human rank primitive saint grade martial tactic? Duan Lingtian stared intently at Shanghu, making him feel a little awkward. He did not put much thought into it. He just thought the merit points would be more useful to Duan Lingtian. Come on, you're a man. Don't dawdle, Duan Lingtian said impatiently. Only then did Shanghu took his crystal card out. However, when he saw the number of merit points that Duan Lingtian transferred to him, he cried out, Senior brother Duan, this isn't right. I remembered Master gave me 20,000 merit points, why did you transfer 250,000 merit points? What can you do with 20,000 merit points? With this 250,000 merit points, you can buy an Earth rank saint weapon with a 2-star saint inscription and also borrow a human rank primitive saint grade martial tactic. Duan Lingtian said, this is all I can do to help you. As for the merit points you'll need to borrow human rank primitive saint grade martial tactics in the future, you'll have to earn it yourself. Senior brother Duan. Shanghu became a little teary-eyed when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. He knew Duan Lingtian was trying to help him. Even his master, the city governor of Mount Hill City, might not necessarily have an Earth-rank saint weapon with 2-star saint inscription. That's enough. Hurry up and go to the merit pavilion, Duan Lingtian said. He returned to his own courtyard before Shanghu even had a chance to reply. In regards to giving Shanghu so many merit points, he had given it a long thought. Currently, in the Moon Illumination sect, he had completely offended that inner court elder, Lu Huan. If Lu Huan thought he was hard to deal with, he would definitely change his target to Shanghu and Ling Yun. Shanghu and Ling Yun would certainly be in a very miserable state if they could not protect themselves. Although Lu Huan would not have let people from Mount Hill City go so easily, Duan Lingtian also played a part in fanning the flames. Therefore, he did not want Shanghu and Ling Yun to lose because of him. Bai Li Hong would only be done inscribing the saint inscription on the sun-shooting bow in 3 days' time. During those 3 days, Duan Lingtian entered the second level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda and cultivated for 9 days. He came out of after 9 days. Naturally, only 3 days had passed in the outside world. This time, Duan Lingtian went alone to Bai Li Hong's mansion. Your saint weapon. Bai Li Hong passed the sun-shooting bow back to Duan Lingtian. After Duan Lingtian received it, he decided to test it out on the spot. Coincidentally, there was a huge stone in Bai Li Hong's front yard. Moreover, it was not an ordinary stone. Even with your strength, saint weapon, and the penetration saint inscription, it's still too soon for you penetrate this boulder with your arrow, Bai Li Hong said to Duan Lingtian. That boulder was a unique stone in the Dao martial saint land. The metal extracted from it could even be refined into saint weapons. Naturally, it could only be refined into human-rank saint weapons. It definitely would not be easy to penetrate the large stone with his arrow. Duan Lingtian remained quiet even after hearing Bai Li Hong's words. With a raise of his arm, he lifted the sun-shooting bow. In his right hand, true energy appeared and formed an arrow that he knocked on the bow before he pulled the bowstring back. This is the penetration saint inscription. While Duan Lingtian pulled the bowstring, his eyes landed on the inconspicuous inscription on it. Obviously, it was the 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription, inscribed by Bai Li Hong. Without any hesitation, Duan Lingtian directed some true energy into it to activate it. The penetration saint inscription was instantly activated. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian could clearly feel the changes in the arrow made from true energy. It was as though the arrow acquired the ability to penetrate through everything in just an instant. After a deep breath, Duan Lingtian pulled the bowstring back with all his might. Ti-chi, ti-chi, the bowstring sounded softly but sharply. Bai Li Hong stood aside and stared intently at the scene before him. He, too, wanted to see how strong this martial Dao prodigy who was so famous in the outer court was with a saint weapon inscribed with the penetration saint inscription. Once Duan Lingtian knocked the arrow and pulled the bowstring, he straightened his back. It was as though he had transformed into a strong bow as well. Suddenly, the strong bow trembled fiercely. In the next moment, the arrow that was knocked on the bowstring shook and transformed into a streak of light. It flew out and slammed into the boulder, leaving a hole behind. Before Bai Li Hong managed to regain his senses, he heard another soft noise. After the true energy arrow penetrated the boulder, it continued flying out. Ah! At this moment, a scream from outside was heard. Duan Lingtian could not help but feel shocked. Someone was shot. For a moment, Duan Lingtian did not know what to think. Who was so unlucky? Duan Lingtian immediately rushed to the entrance of Bai Li Hong's mansion and looked outside. He saw an inner court disciple limping away quickly. It was as though he did not want to loiter too long near Bai Li Hong's mansion without any reason. It seems like Elder Bai Li's status as a 3-star saint inscription master is quite high in the Moon Illumination sect, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. It was not difficult for him to figure this out. Even the sect leader and the few saint stage powerhouses in the Moon Illumination sect had to treat him respectfully, let alone those below them. The inner court disciple had to be the disciple of an inner court elder. As a disciple of an inner court elder, he would naturally know Bai Li Hong was not someone he could offend. When Duan Lingtian returned to Bai Li Hong's front yard, he realized Bai Li Hong was staring at him as though he was a monster. Elder Bai Li, it's no wonder you're a 3-star saint inscription master. The 3-star saint inscription, the penetration saint inscription, is just too strong, Duan Lingtian exclaimed. That shot did not only penetrate the boulder, it had also penetrated the thick wall before it injured an inner court disciple who was passing by. Are you really just a martial cultivator at the perfection mortal shedding stage? Bai Li Hong muttered as he looked at him intently, ignoring Duan Lingtian's words. What, does Elder Bai Li want to verify it with the spiritual secret tactic? Duan Lingtian shook his head. He had suggested this himself. It was equivalent to shooting himself in his feet. You're really at the perfection mortal shedding stage. You're truly a little freak, Bai Li Hong muttered with a gasp. At this moment, he was even more certain that the master Duan Lingtian had mentioned was real. If Duan Lingtian did not have such a mysterious and powerful master behind him, how could he be such a freak? Bai Li Hong's thoughts were simple and straightforward. With your current strength, you should be able to rank at the top of the Earth ranking. When you break through to the paramount mortal shedding stage, I'm afraid that even the number one person on the Earth ranking will have to relinquish his position, Bai Li Hong said as he looked at Duan Lingtian with a myriad of emotions in his eyes. Elder Bai Li has so much confidence in me? Duan Lingtian asked with a smile. Humph, I'm just confident about my saint inscription. Bai Li Hong snorted. Naturally, he would not admit that. Every time he remembered he had given away a 3-star saint inscription for free, he felt as though his heart was bleeding. Even the various materials needed to inscribe a 3-star saint inscription were worth around 200,000 to 300,000 merit points in the Moon Illumination sect. If Duan Lingtian heard Bai Li Hong's inner thought, he would definitely curse him. Bai Li Hong actually sold a saint inscription that was worth around 200,000 to 300,000 merit points at the exorbitant price of millions of merit points. Even the crows were not as black-hearted as him. Elder Bai Li, am I going to learn about saint inscription from you today? Duan Lingtian asked as his eyes glinted. I certainly wouldn't go back on my word since I've already promised you. However, you can't learn the saint inscription Tao just because you want to. It'll depend on your innate talent. You'll have to prepare yourself for that, Bai Li Hong warned Duan Lingtian. Chapter 1476. It's not easy to learn the saint inscription Tao. I'll need to be mentally prepared apart from being talented. Duan Lingtian snickered when he heard Bai Li Hong's words. However, he did not respond to him. The rebirth martial emperor's lifelong experience and knowledge on inscription techniques was inherited by Duan Lingtian. Although inscriptions and saint inscriptions were different, both of them were essentially similar when it came down to it. Therefore, Duan Lingtian did not need to learn saint inscription Tao from scratch. He would be able to master the saint inscription Tao as long as he was able to find their similarities and master the differences. This was why he was confident about becoming an excellent saint inscription master. In the following month, Duan Lingtian stayed in Bai Li Hong's estate to learn saint inscription Tao from him. In the beginning, Bai Li Hong was pessimistic about Duan Lingtian's ability to master the saint inscription Tao. This was because Duan Lingtian had already proven himself to be extremely talented in the martial Tao. Bai Li Hong believed that life was fair. He did not think life would bestow Duan Lingtian with talent in both the martial Tao and the saint inscription Tao. However, the truth hurt. He felt like God was playing a prank on him. He could not help but ask himself, how can there be such a talented person in this world? Duan Lingtian already managed to inscribe a 1-star saint inscription just after a month. Bai Li Hong suspected that Duan Lingtian could have inscribed a 2-star saint inscription if it was not for his weak spiritual energy. During this 1 month, Duan Lingtian had surprised him far too many times, from knowing nothing at the beginning to reaching the novice level and coming up with interesting ideas and concepts. Occasionally Duan Lingtian would give Bai Li Hong a feeling as though Duan Lingtian was an experienced saint inscription master instead of a beginner in the saint inscription Tao. Although it was unbelievable, it was a fact that he felt that way. Inscriptions and saint inscriptions are essentially the same. Duan Lingtian had found the bridge connecting inscriptions and saint inscriptions after 10 days of learning from Bai Li Hong. During the 20th day, Duan Lingtian had already managed to cross the bridge and comprehend the saint inscription Tao in his own way. A few days later, Duan Lingtian had fully mastered the similarities and differences of inscriptions and saint inscriptions. Moreover, he was also able to convert some of the inscriptions in the rebirth martial emperor's memory into saint inscriptions. There were too many types of inscriptions in the rebirth martial emperor's memory. It would take more than a day to list them down one by one. Currently, Duan Lingtian was able to inscribe the 2-star and 3-star saint inscriptions, 1000 mass saint inscription, Gale saint inscription, and the penetration saint inscription through the inscriptions in the rebirth martial emperor's memory. Similar to the other saint inscription masters in the Tao martial saint land, Duan Lingtian needed to refine the ink-like liquid from raw materials to inscribe the saint inscription before he could use the inscription pen to inscribe saint inscriptions. Currently, Duan Lingtian was only able to inscribe 1-star saint inscription due to his limited spiritual energy. He would have to enter the saint rudiment stage before he could attempt to inscribe 2-star saint inscriptions. At that time, his spiritual energy would be stronger and enable him to inscribe 2-star saint inscriptions. Through this month of learning, I'm now able to convert inscriptions to saint inscriptions. As long as I have sufficient spiritual energy, I'll be able to inscribe a saint inscription of the same level with the help of the rebirth martial emperor's memory, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself. This scenario was the same as when he was on Cloud Continent. At that time, he was able to inscribe inscriptions that was at a similar level with his spiritual energy. Elder Bai Li, thank you. I'm sorry to have inconvenienced you for the past month. Duan Lingtian sincerely thanked Bai Li Hong as he looked at him. It was time for Duan Lingtian to leave since a month had passed. Duan Lingtian, your talent in the saint inscription Dao far surpassed mine. Bai Li Hong looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated expression. Suddenly, as though he had made up his mind, he said to Duan Lingtian solemnly, Duan Lingtian, I wish to take you as a disciple on behalf of my teacher, are you willing to accept this? Elder Bai Li, you have a teacher. Duan Lingtian was surprised. Of course, who do you think I learned the saint inscription Dao from? Bai Li Hong shook his head and said with a straight face, Duan Lingtian, my teacher was a 7-star saint inscription master. Even the inscription pen that I'm using was given by him. A 7-star saint inscription master. Duan Lingtian was undoubtedly shocked by Bai Li Hong's words. Although Duan Lingtian knew that Bai Li Hong must have had a teacher, and his teacher had to be a 4-star saint inscription master at least, he did not think his teacher would be a 7-star saint inscription master. Do you know why I was so confident about making the bet with you a month ago? Bai Li Hong asked. Isn't it because you're confident about being able to inscribe saint inscriptions on heaven-ranked saint weapons? Duan Lingtian asked. Then do you know why I'm confident I can inscribe saint inscriptions on heaven-ranked saint weapons? Bai Li Hong continued to ask. I think it should be because of your inscription pen, Duan Lingtian said after he thought about it for a short while. The materials used to forge heaven-ranked saint weapons were extremely tough and solid. Naturally, if an inscription pen was of poor quality, it would not be able to make a mark on a heaven-ranked saint weapon. You're right, it's because of my inscription pen. Bai Li Hong nodded. He continued to say with a sparkle in his eye, normally, a regular 3-star saint inscription master will own a 4-star inscription pen at most. However, a 4-star inscription pen can only inscribe saint inscriptions on earth-ranked primitive saint weapons and nothing higher. A 4-star inscription pen is only able to inscribe saint inscriptions on earth-ranked primitive saint weapons. It's so specific, Duan Lingtian said, surprised. Of course. Bai Li Hong nodded and continued, inscription pens are sorted into 9 different grades based on its quality. A 1-star inscription pen is the worst, and a 9-star inscription pen is the best. This grading is commonly used in the Dao Martial Saint land. However, according to my teacher, there are even better inscription pens than the 9-star inscription pens in the Dao Martial Saint land. Duan Lingtian gained a deeper understanding of inscription pens in the Dao Martial Saint land. Although he had already found the connection between inscriptions and saint inscriptions and mastered converting inscriptions to saint inscriptions, he was still in the dark when it came to inscription pens in the Dao Martial Saint land. After listening to Bai Li Hong, Duan Lingtian finally understood more about inscription pens. 1-star inscription pens are equivalent to human-rank primitive saint weapons. This means that a 1-star inscription pen can only be used to inscribe a human-rank primitive saint weapon at most. 2-star inscription pens are equivalent to human-rank mediocre saint weapons, meaning that a 2-star inscription pen can only be used to inscribe a human-rank mediocre saint weapon at most. 3-star inscription pens are equivalent to human-rank prominent saint weapons, 4-star inscription pens are equivalent to earth-rank primitive saint weapons, 9-star inscription pens are equivalent to heaven-ranked prominent saint weapons. You get the idea. Duan Lingtian gained a deeper understanding of inscription pens after listening to Bai Li Hong's explanation. Does this mean your inscription pen has more than 7 stars, Elder Bai Li? Duan Lingtian asked, stunned. Bai Li Hong said he was able to inscribe a saint inscription on a heaven-ranked saint weapon a month ago. Duan Lingtian came to this conclusion after he learned more about inscription pens. You're right, Bai Li Hong nodded and took out his inscription pen as he said, this is the pen I inherited from the teacher I've never met. It's a 9-star inscription pen. With this, I can even inscribe a saint inscription on a heaven-rank prominent saint weapon. Now you know where I got my confidence from a month ago. Bai Li Hong looked at Duan Lingtian after he finished speaking. At the same time, he recalled the bet they made a month ago and sighed. I didn't think your saint weapon is superior to heaven-rank prominent saint weapons. It must be a super saint weapon. Bai Li Hong thought Duan Lingtian's sun shooting bow was a super saint weapon. However, only Duan Lingtian knew the sun shooting bow was not a super saint weapon but a broken celestial supreme treasure. A sleeping lion was still stronger than a barking dog. After all, the sun shooting bow was still a celestial supreme treasure. No matter how damaged it was still far superior compared to a super saint weapon in terms of toughness. Duan Lingtian was shocked when he heard Bai Li Hong said the pen he owned was a 9-star inscription pen. As for the remainder of Bai Li Hong's speech, Duan Lingtian did not register what he had said at all. A 9-star inscription pen was the best inscription pen in the Dao Martial Saint land. Although Duan Lingtian had guessed that Bai Li Hong's inscription pen had at least 7 stars, he did not think it would turn out to be a 9-star inscription pen. Elder Bai Li, didn't you say your teacher was just a 7-star saint inscription master? How did he come to possess a 9-star inscription pen? Duan Lingtian asked as he looked at Bai Li Hong in shock. I have no idea about this as well. Teacher did not mention this in the jade tokens he left behind. Bai Li Hong shook his head. You never asked him? Duan Lingtian continued to ask. Ask him. Bai Li Hong was stunned by Duan Lingtian's question. He forced a laugh and said, Duan Lingtian, I told you earlier that I've not met my teacher at all, I merely inherited a spatial ring that my teacher left behind. Apart from some raw materials for saint inscriptions, there were 2 jade tokens and this 9-star inscription pen. I don't even know which era my teacher's from. Bai Li Hong sighed. I see. Duan Lingtian finally understood that Bai Li Hong's saint inscription knowledge was inherited from a 7-star saint inscription master's spatial ring and not from the 7-star saint inscription master himself. Since your teacher had passed, why do you want to take me as a disciple on your teacher's behalf, Elder Bai Li? Duan Lingtian asked. My teacher left a request in his jade token stating that if I have average talent in the Saint Inscription Dao, and I meet someone whose talent in the Saint Inscription Dao far exceeds mine, I must take him as a disciple on behalf of my teacher so that I can pass on the strange inscription art to him. Bai Li Hong turned more and more solemn as he spoke. Strange inscription art? Duan Lingtian was surprised. He said, what's that? Does it have any relations to the Saint Inscription Dao? According to my teacher, the strange inscription art is a different technique of inscribing saint inscriptions. Its main philosophy is to inscribe saint inscriptions that have the same effect as traditionally inscribed saint inscriptions by using the cheapest raw materials, same saint inscriptions using raw materials of different value. In extreme cases, the difference can be very vast. Bai Li Hong explained. Chapter 1477. Unfortunately, due to my limited talent, I can't learn the strange inscription art my teacher left behind. I wouldn't have everything I have today if I didn't have the orthodox saint inscription cultivation technique my teacher left behind, Bai Li Hong said solemnly. He sighed when he reached the end of his sentence. The fact that he could not learn the strange inscription art that the teacher he had never met left behind had always bothered him. He had met a few talented saint inscription masters throughout the years. However, none of them managed to learn the strange inscription art. The important part of the strange inscription art was the strange part. The saint inscriptions would only require less than half of the materials used in orthodox saint inscriptions and produce the same effect when the strange inscription art was applied. The strange inscription art was so magical because it required high spiritual energy. High spiritual energy did not mean having a high spiritual energy level, but it meant a high usage of spiritual energy. Only people who had an abundance of spiritual energy would be able to master the strange inscription art. Some people were born with powerful spiritual energy and could summon them with just a thought, like the soul and thought synchronization. Unfortunately, Bai Li Hong was not one of them. Thus, he was destined to not have fate with the strange inscription art. That had always been something that troubled him. Ever since he had obtained the inheritance from the 7-star Saint Inscription Master, he knew the 7-star Saint Inscription Master was eager to find an heir for the strange inscription art. Therefore, he had always been looking out for an eligible heir for the 7-star Saint Inscription Master. Although he had never met that 7-star Saint Inscription Master, he had always treated him as his teacher. After all, he would not be who he was today without that 7-star Saint Inscription Master. Throughout the years, he had searched for a lot of cultivation resources with the help of Saint Inscription Dao to achieve what he had today. He would not have everything he had today if he had just depended on his talent alone. He was someone who knew how to feel grateful. That was why he had been looking for an opportunity to return the favor. He finally found his opportunity. Duan Lingtian was the person he had been looking for. The heir who could inherit his teacher's strange inscription art. When Duan Lingtian was inscribing inscriptions, Bai Li Hong could tell the way he applied his spiritual energy had already reached the peak of perfection. He truly admired him for that. Strange inscription art. Duan Lingtian became curious about the strange inscription art after learning about it from Bai Li Hong. The Orthodox Saint inscription Dao in the Dao martial Saint land was undoubtedly similar to the inscription Dao on Cloud Continent. However, this strange inscription art was different from the inscription Dao on Cloud Continent. That was why it piqued his interest. This jade token contained the recording of the strange inscription art. I think you're the most suitable person to have this. Bai Li Hong lifted his arm to take out a jade token and handed it over to Duan Lingtian solemnly. He said seriously, Duan Lingtian, I know you already have a master, but if you manage to learn the strange inscription art, I hope that you'll treat my teacher as yours too. I'll definitely do that. Duan Lingtian did not reject the jade token that Bai Li Hong handed over. He was curious about the strange inscription art. It was only natural he did not reject the opportunity that was presented to him. It was a matter of course for him to treat Bai Li Hong's teacher as his own since he received the inheritance from the 7-star saint inscription master. Moreover, nobody knew which era this 7-star saint inscription master was from, and it was uncertain if he was even alive. Therefore, Duan Lingtian did not take long to think about it before he made his choice. Only idiots would reject good fortune that was sent to their doorsteps. From today onward, you're my, Bai Li Hong, junior brother, Bai Li Hong said with a smile. Stop calling me Elder Bai Li from now on. Just call me senior brother. Senior brother. Duan Lingtian was not someone who paid attention to trivial matters, so he instantly changed the way he addressed Bai Li Hong. A charming smile appeared on Bai Li Hong's face when he heard the way Duan Lingtian addressed him. No matter if teacher's still alive or not, he'll definitely be happy if he knows I managed to get him such an outstanding disciple like you. Senior brother, don't praise me so much. I'm not even certain if I'll be able to learn the strange inscription art yet, Duan Lingtian said with a smile as he shook his head. Judging by the way you applied your spiritual energy, if you're unable to learn the strange inscription art, I'm afraid nobody in the world would be able to learn it. That was how much confidence Bai Li Hong had in Duan Lingtian. Just like that, Duan Lingtian got an inner court elder to be his senior brother before he even entered the inner court of Moon Illumination sect. Furthermore, this inner court elder was not an ordinary inner court elder. As a 3-star saint inscription master, Bai Li Hong's position in the Moon Illumination sect was not only on par with the few vice sect leaders in the sect, but his position was even higher than some of them. His position was so high that even a few of the saint stage powerhouses, including the sect leader, had to be polite to him when they met. Junior brother, I heard you came from Mount Hill City. Bai Li Hong asked. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. It was not a secret in Moon Illumination sect that he came from Mount Hill City. I'll deal Lu Huan later. I'll let him know that Bai Li Hong's junior brother isn't someone he can mess with. Bai Li Hong's eyes flashed, and his tone was domineering. It was obvious he knew about the conflict between Lu Huan and the people from Mount Hill City. Naturally, Duan Lingtian did not reject Bai Li Hong's kindness. However, he knew very well that Lu Huan would only behave himself on the surface. Even though he was afraid of his senior brother, Lu Huan would still see Duan Lingtian as a thorn in his flesh. Lu Huan would definitely have sleepless nights if he did not get rid of Duan Lingtian. That's still good, at least Lu Huan will behave himself outwardly. That's a good thing for Shanghu and Ling Yun, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Senior brother, since a month has passed, I should head back now. Duan Lingtian bade farewell to Bai Li Hong. Junior brother, leave your bow here, senior brother will inscribe another 2 3-star saint inscriptions for you. My current limit is inscribing 3 3-star saint inscriptions on a saint weapon. More than 3 is beyond my ability, Bai Li Hong said to Duan Lingtian. Now that Duan Lingtian was his junior brother, it was only natural that he wanted to help him as much as he could. He would be a little unwilling to inscribe a 3-star saint inscription for Duan Lingtian if it was in the past. However, he could not be happier to inscribe more 3-star saint inscriptions for Duan Lingtian now. Thank you, senior brother, Duan Lingtian thanked him immediately as his eyes lit up. If there were 3 3-star saint inscriptions on his son's shooting bow, its power would be undoubtedly boosted. It would be immensely helpful to him. Although he had mastered both saint inscriptions along with regular inscriptions and his comprehension of saint inscription Dao was not inferior to Bai Li Hong, he could only inscribe 1-star saint inscriptions at the moment due to his weak spiritual energy. According to Bai Li Hong, he would need to break through to the perfection saint rudiment stage at least to be able to inscribe 3-star saint inscriptions. You can stay in my mansion from today onward, Bai Li Hong said to Duan Lingtian. Senior brother will get a hold of a quiet courtyard for you. It'll definitely be better than the courtyard you're residing in the outer court. Senior brother, I'm grateful for your kindness, but I would like to stay in the outer court during this period of time. It won't be too late for me to stay in your courtyard when I enter the inner court in the future, Duan Lingtian said with a smile. That's a promise. You must stay here when you enter the inner court in the future, Bai Li Hong said solemnly. Of course, Duan Lingtian replied immediately as he nodded. Duan Lingtian left immediately after he handed over his sun's shooting bow to Bai Li Hong. He was eager to return so he could study the strange inscription art. If he really mastered it, he would be able to earn twice as much compared to ordinary saint inscription masters. After all, the materials needed for a saint inscription master who mastered the strange inscription art were less than half of what was required for ordinary saint inscription master. Duan Lingtian thought that, perhaps, that was not the only amazing thing about the strange inscription art. This was because Bai Li Hong did not learn the strange inscription art. It was only natural that his knowledge of it was limited. Naturally, this was all just his speculation. He would have to find out if he was right. When Duan Lingtian left the inner court, news began to spread in the inner court. The one and only 3-star saint inscription master in Moon Illumination sect, Inner Court Elder Bai Li Hong, announced that he had accepted Outer Court disciple Duan Lingtian as a disciple on behalf of his teacher. From now on, Duan Lingtian was his, Bai Li Hong, junior brother. The news spread like a tornado in the inner court and created an uproar. It was as though the inner court had gone through an earthquake. Elder Bai Li took an outer court disciple as his junior brother. This is a joke, right? Who's that outer court disciple? Is he outstanding? Is he so outstanding that Elder Bai Li took him as his junior brother? At this moment, those inner court disciples who usually showed no concern about the happenings in the outer court were stunned by the news. How can it be? You don't know who Duan Lingtian is? Duan Lingtian is so popular in entire sect recently. How could all of you not heard of him? Those inner court disciples who had heard about Duan Lingtian informed those who were unaware of the things Duan Lingtian had done since he entered the sect. This caused Duan Lingtian's fame so spread even more in the inner court. Even those inner court disciples who had heard of Duan Lingtian earlier were shocked to learn that he had become Elder Bai Li's junior brother. Some of them tried to get to the bottom of the news and eventually found out that it was true. Duan Lingtian really became Elder Bai Li's junior brother. Since the news had spread to the inner court, it was only natural that Lu Huan had also heard about the news. Lu Huan crushed the teacup he was holding in his hand into powder in a fit of rage when he heard the news. Who is Duan Lingtian that even Bai Li Hong, that old fella, acknowledged him as his junior brother? Damn it, damn it. Lu Huan had always treated Duan Lingtian as an eyesore. It was only natural he felt as though he had eaten a fly when he found out that Duan Lingtian had gained such great support out of nowhere. Chapter 1478. Elder Bai Li accepted Duan Lingtian as a disciple on behalf of his teacher, and now he's Elder Bai's junior brother. Su Qi came to look for Lu Han but came to halt outside his courtyard when he heard him screaming. Although a complicated look flashed in his eyes, a subtle smile appeared on the edge of his lips. After that, he turned around and left. He did not meet Lu Huan in the end. He knew Lu Huan's temper very well. He would only be looking for trouble if he went and looked for Lu Huan now. In the next few days, the news spread from the inner court to the outer court. Needless to say, the outer court was shocked by the news as well. It was not surprising if one of the outstanding outer court disciples was secretly taken as a direct disciple of an inner court elder. It was not a rare occurrence in Moon Illumination sect. However, this was the first time in Moon Illumination sect's history for an inner court elder to take an outer court disciple as his junior brother. Moreover, the inner court elder in question was not just an ordinary inner court elder. Elder Bai Li took Duan Lingtian as a disciple on his teacher's behalf, and he's now Elder Bai's junior brother. Is that true? The news came from the inner court, and it was confirmed by the people from Elder Bai Li's mansion. It's impossible for the news to be fake. Isn't senior brother Duan Lingtian too extraordinary? The fact that he became an inner court disciple from an outer court disciple causes people to be envious and resentful. Good for him on becoming an elder's junior brother. His position is on par with the inner court elders. Most importantly, the inner court elder in question is Elder Bai Li, who doesn't know that Elder Bai Li is the only 3-star saint inscription master in our Moon Illumination sect. In the 9 sects in the 9 sect alliances, our Moon Illumination sect and one other sect are the only ones who have a 3-star saint inscription master. The other 7 sects don't have one. They would have to beg our Moon Illumination sect if they need a 3-star saint inscription master. Even the sect leader doesn't dare to slack in front of Elder Bai Li. After all, Elder Bai Li might leave the sect if he's unhappy. It would be a great loss to the sect if that happens. As expected, a commotion broke out in the outer court when the news spread. Almost all the outer court elders, deacons, and disciples who were not in closed-door cultivation heard about the news. In a mansion in a remote corner of the outer court Grand Elder Dongfang Quan almost spat out the tea he had just drank when he heard the news. Elder Bai Li accepted Duan Lingtian as his junior brother. Dongfang Quan inhaled sharply. He was still in shock even after he had a sip of tea. Dongfang Quan's position as the Grand Elder in the outer court was not inferior to the inner court elders in the Moon Illumination sect. In fact, his position was even higher than ordinary outer court elders. However, even he had to be respectful when he saw Elder Bai Li. This was not because Elder Bai Li was extremely powerful, it was because he was a 3-star saint inscription master. If he had to reveal the people he feared the most in the Moon Illumination sect, apart from those saint stage powerhouses and the sect leader, Elder Bai Li was one of them, and now, Elder Bai Li had taken Duan Lingtian as his junior brother. Elder Bai Li isn't an impulsive person. Why would he take Duan Lingtian as his junior brother? Dongfang Quan could not figure it out even after thinking for a long time. Eventually, he could only come up with his own conclusion. Perhaps Duan Lingtian revealed his real identity to him, that's why he took Duan Lingtian as his junior brother to cover things up and protect Duan Lingtian. He did not think Duan Lingtian and Bai Li Hong knew each other prior to this. If Duan Lingtian and Bai Li Hong had such a relationship, why did Duan Lingtian spend 4th grade and 5th grade saint stones just to get Bai Li Hong to act as a witness? Therefore, he was quite certain Duan Lingtian and Bai Li Hong only became closer recently. Apart from Dongfang Quan, who was shocked by the news of Bai Li Hong accepting Duan Lingtian as his junior brother, Huang Cheng, who was in his courtyard in the outer court, heard about the news as well. Huang Cheng's expression was grave when he heard the news. A deafening noise reverberated in the air when he slammed his hand on the stone table and turned it into dust. Is this news true? Huang Cheng asked solemnly as he looked at the outer disciple who told him the news. It's true. I heard even the people from Elder Bai Li's mansion confirmed the news. The outer court disciple nodded. All right, you can leave now, Huang Cheng said after he took a deep breath, gesturing for the outer court disciple to retreat. After the outer court disciple who brought him the news left, Huang Cheng had a solemn expression on his face when he groaned in his deep voice. Does this mean the matter between me and Duan Lingtian has to end just like that? Doesn't this mean I lost over 300,000 merit points for nothing? He was unwilling. Eventually, Huang Cheng took a deep breath in before he muttered to himself, Duan Lingtian, I can't do anything to you in the sect since you have Elder Bai Li's support. However, I'll make you regret this if you dare to leave the sect. It was clear Huang Cheng was not going to give up. Meanwhile, outer court deacon Deng Wei had also heard the news. He had an extremely solemn expression on his face as well. I wonder what exactly does Duan Lingtian have to earn Elder Bai Li's favor and even become his junior brother. Suddenly, the opportunity for him to take revenge turned extremely slim. Forget it, you is the reason for my seeking vengeance. Now that Duan Lingtian obtained support, it's pointless for me to continue treating him as an enemy. Otherwise, I'll definitely die if Elder Bai Li finds out about it. As opposed to Huang Cheng, Deng Wei had decided to give up on the idea of revenge. I must let you know about this, I must get him to let go of the grudge he has with Duan Lingtian. Deng Wei took action immediately. He wrote a letter and had someone send them to the Deng clan. He did not want the grudge between Deng Yu and Duan Lingtian to bring disaster to the Deng clan. In another independent courtyard, Yi Man's eyes turned red, and his expression was grave. Elder Bai Li, the one and only 3-star saint inscription master in the Moon Illumination sect. Duan Lingtian, were you born just to oppress me, Yi Man? I'm unwilling, Yi Man growled in his deep voice. At this very moment, he realized Duan Lingtian would always be better than him. In another independent courtyard, He Zhong sighed when he heard the news. Although it's impossible, I hope Uncle will stop doing what he's doing, That Elder Bai Li is someone even my master, the vice sect leader of the Moon Illumination sect, is afraid of. Although his master was the vice sect leader of Moon Illumination sect and a powerhouse approaching the saint stage, their abilities were on par. This was because Elder Bai Li had an Earth rank prominent saint weapon inscribed with 3 3-star inscriptions. Due to the saint weapon, it allowed Elder Bai Li to fight on equal footing with someone close to the saint stage even though he was only at the saint rudiment stage. Eventually, He Zhang clenched his teeth and left the outer court to enter the inner court. Lu Huan was his uncle by blood after all. He thought it was important to talk to him. I know. Lu Huan nodded perfunctorily when he heard He Zhang's advice. Although He Zhang knew Lu Huan was brushing him off, he knew that was the best he could do. Uncle, now that Duan Lingtian is Elder Bai Li's junior brother, I'm afraid even my master wouldn't want to offend him. I know. Lu Huan nodded lightly. You may leave if there's nothing else that you want to say. He Zhang sighed and left when he heard Lu Huan trying to send him off. That was the only thing he could do. No matter what, he had given his best. He had done in part on behalf of his late mother who had passed away many years ago. Lu Huan smirked after He Zhang left. Want me to stay my hands? That's not going to happen. I've taken an oath that anyone from Mount Hill City will either die or come under my tutelage, there's no exception. That includes Duan Lingtian. 5 days later, a guest arrived at Lu Huan's mansion. Elder Bai Li. Lu Huan's expression was a little unnatural, but he bowed respectfully anyway. Although both of them were inner court elders, this person's position in the Moon Illumination sect was high above him and could not be compared. Elder Lu Huan. It was Bai Li Hong, Duan Lingtian's senior brother. I've never liked beating around the bush. I'm here to remind you that Duan Lingtian's my junior brother. Whoever messes with him will be messing with me, Bai Li Hong. Although Bai Li Hong's tone was calm, it was overbearing. Elder Bai Li's close relationship with your junior brother is enviable. It took quite an effort for Lu Huan to force a smile on his face and suppress the rising rage inside. That's all I have to say. You better behave yourself. Bai Li Hong left immediately after he glanced at Lu Huan. He entered and exited Lu Huan's mansion as swift as wind in a barren land. Once Bai Li Hong left, Lu Huan's face turned completely solemn and said with hatred, Duan Lingtian, I'm not human as long as you're still alive. Unless you hide yourself in Moon Illumination sect for the rest of your life like a coward, there's no way for you escape death. Lu Huan left Moon Illumination sect soon after. He headed north in the direction of Han River City. Han River City was the biggest city within the 9 sect alliances. It was also the most bustling city with all walks of life, and it was also where the 9 sect alliance's headquarters was located. Chapter 1479. Now that 10 days have passed, I suppose senior brother should be done with inscribing the other 2 3-star saint inscriptions on my sun shooting bow, right? After leaving the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, Duan Lingtian left the outer court and entered the inner court. Did you see that? That's Duan Lingtian. Unlike before, he was soon recognized after he entered the inner court. Many inner court disciples' eyes were trained on him wherever he went. No wonder those outer court disciples looked at me differently when I left my courtyard. It seems like the news of senior brother taking a disciple on behalf of his teacher and making me his junior brother has spread out. He had not gone out ever since he left Bai Li Hong's mansion 10 days ago. He only left the 2nd level of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda after a month. A month was equivalent to 10 days in the outside world. He knew the news had spread when he recalled those outer court disciples looking at him respectfully during his journey here and the complicated expression in the inner court disciples' eyes. Soon after, Duan Lingtian arrived at Bai Li Hong's mansion again. Young Master Lingtian, please come in. Even the servant in Bai Li Hong's mansion was respectful to Duan Lingtian now. He treated Duan Lingtian as his second master. Junior brother. Bai Li Hong welcomed Duan Lingtian from far away. He was extremely friendly. Senior brother, Duan Lingtian responded with a smile. I hope this doesn't disappoint you. Bai Li Hong took out Duan Lingtian's sun shooting bow immediately and handed it over to him. Duan Lingtian looked the sun shooting bow as soon as he took it from Bai Li Hong. Soon, he saw the 2 extra saint inscriptions on it. Senior brother, what are the 2 3-star saint inscriptions that you've inscribed for me? The 2 3-star saint inscriptions are Explosive Flame Saint Inscription and Corrosion Saint Inscription, Bai Li Hong said with a smile. These are the 2 3-star saint inscriptions that I exclusively picked for you. I think it'll go well and work great with the Penetration inscription. I would like to hear more about it. Duan Lingtian had a curious expression on his face. It's useless to talk about it. Let's get out of the sect and experiment on the wild beasts outside, Bai Lihong suggested. That's a great idea. Duan Lingtian nodded. Indeed, it would be useless to talk about it. It was better to put it to practice. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian and Bai Lihong left the Moon Illumination sect and arrived outside of the Moon Illumination sect's estate. It was Duan Lingtian's first time leaving the Moon Illumination sect since he arrived close to 4 months ago. HMPH. Your lucky Bai Lihong is with you. A silhouette loomed at the side of the Moon Illumination sect's monastery gate. From the distance, it looked blurry, making people think it was just a figment of their imagination. However, one would be able to tell it was a person upon closer inspection. If it was an outer court disciple, they would be able to tell it was outer court elder Huang Cheng with just a glance. Although Huang Cheng was only an outer court elder, and his cultivation base was not as powerful as Bai Lihong, he obtained a secret tactic to hide his location when he was young. Now that his cultivation base was at the Perfection Saint rudiment stage, it was impossible for people to see him as long as they were not powerhouses at the Saint stage. This was why Bai Lihong did not detect his presence. He had requested to keep watch of the monastery gate recently. Apart from a few outer court disciples, usually there would also be an outer court elder in charge of the monastery gate duty. Naturally, Huang Cheng had an ulterior motive for making this request. His target was Duan Lingtian. He would follow Duan Lingtian if he dared to leave the Moon Illumination sect without any powerhouses accompanying him. He would kill Duan Lingtian once he was far away from the Moon Illumination sect's estate. He would then take his spatial ring and his crystal card. His goal was to take back the merit points he had lost to Duan Lingtian and kill him to vent his anger. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was unaware someone else at the Moon Illumination sect was plotting his death apart from Lu Huan. Duan Lingtian followed Bai Lihong to a remote place, away from the Moon Illumination sect's estate. There was a lot of wild beasts in this place. Wild beasts were beasts with no sentience in the Dao Martial Saint land. They were similar to wild animals on mortal continent that killed each other for survival and only the strong lived. Each powerful wild beast had a territory of their own. They were very territorial and would fight to the death if someone were to invade their territories. This area is an early Saint stage wild beasts territory, Bai Lihong said to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded. Bai Lihong told him about this place before they arrived. This place was called Beast Ridge. All wild beasts above the Saint rudiment stage had their own territories here and were kings of their territories. Bang! As soon as Bai Lihong lifted his arms and swung them down, an invisible force slammed down on the ground in front of them. Not only was one of the big trees crushed, but a gigantic pit appeared on the ground as well. Watch out, it's coming, Bai Lihong said. Shoot him with all your might when it appears, don't shoot at its vital points though. Don't shoot at its vital point. Duan Lingtian was surprised. Then how do we kill it? Just do as I've said. However, you must activate the 3 saint inscriptions at the same time without missing anyone, Bai Lihong reminded him. Duan Lingtian nodded. Soon after, a gigantic beast appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes following the sound of a howl. It was a mountain-like wild beast. The earth quaked violently in its wake. The wild beast's appearance was very odd. Duan Lingtian found it difficult to find words to describe it. It had a triangular head with huge eyes on all corners. All 3 eyes were glaring at him and Bai Lihong ferociously. Bang! When a loud explosion reverberated in the air, Duan Lingtian saw the mountain-like wild beast stomping. It shot into the sky like a cannon, aiming directly at him and Bai Lihong. Duan Lingtian focused on his left eye and activated strange pupil quietly during the critical moment. Suddenly, the wild beast's speed slowed down in Duan Lingtian's left eye. However, it was still quite fast. The rumbling sound of wind echoed in its wake. Duan Lingtian lifted the sun-shooting bow with his left hand and formed a true energy arrow with his right hand. He then placed the arrow on the bow. As he pulled the bowstring, waves of true energy surged out of his chi through the 70 over saint veins. They rushed into the bowstring he was pulling and activated the 3 saint inscriptions on the bowstring. Penetration Saint Inscription, Explosive Flame Saint Inscription, Corrosion Saint Inscription. The 3 saint inscriptions were all 3-star saint inscriptions. While he held onto the bow and arrow, Duan Lingtian's left eye was focused on his target, the wild beast's lower abdomen. It was not considered a vital point. Since there's the penetration saint inscription, the arrow would penetrate through the wild beast's body, but since it's not its vital point, it'll only be injured at most. Although Duan Lingtian had many concerns, he chose to listen to Bai Li Hong's words. Swoosh! The second Duan Lingtian released his fingers, the true energy arrow he was holding turned into a bolt of green lightning immediately and shot across the air. Due to the penetration saint inscription, the arrow seemed like a falling meteor tearing into space as it shot into the air. In just a blink of an eye, the true energy arrow tore open the wild beast's scales on his lower abdomen, and it cried out in pain. The arrow pierced through it. The arrowhead could be seen exiting from its back in just an instant. Look closely. At this very second, Bai Li Hong sounded. It was like an explosion when it entered Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian did as he was told. The scene before them paused in Duan Lingtian's left eye. Everything happened in a blink of an eye. In the next second, Duan Lingtian was surprised to see the true energy arrow that pierced through the wild beast's body easily due to the penetration inscription began to sparkle with a green light. Subsequently, the bright green light exploded. Bang! Following the explosion, the green true energy flame exploded, causing a massive hole in the wild beast's lower abdomen. The hole was big enough for 2 adults to pass through at the same time. Explosive flame saint inscription. As they listened to the wild beast's devastating cry, these 4 words appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind immediately. Whatever happened before them was not his doing. The only possible cause was the saint inscriptions. The corrosion saint inscription is the only thing left. As if it was responding to Duan Lingtian's thought, black smoke began to emerge from the wild beast's body. The black smoke began to spread and parts would vanish in its wake. The hole on the wild beast's abdomen turned bigger and bigger. The wild beast's flesh was completely corroded when the black smoke spread to it. It was as though it was splashed with sulfuric acid or decomposing powder. The wild beast's cry was getting softer and softer. After a while, it stopped completely. In the end, the wild beast's body corroded until it completely disappeared. All that was left was a cloud of black smoke drifting up into the air before it vanished. Duan Lingtian was dumbstruck. A wild beast at the early saint stage that was alive a second ago disappeared completely in just a blink of an eye. There were many inscriptions similar to the corrosion saint inscription in the rebirth martial emperor's memory. The rebirth martial emperor had even used some of it before. However, those inscriptions could only be used to fight martial artists with mediocre cultivation base. They were useless when used against martial artists with powerful cultivation base. However, this saint inscription managed to turn a wild beast at the early saint stage into ashes. Duan Lingtian was extremely shocked. Chapter 1480. Duan Lingtian finally understood why Bai Li Hong asked him not to aim at the wild beast's vital parts. It was because Bai Li Hong knew he would be able to kill the wild beast even without attacking its vital parts. Both the explosive flame saint inscription or corrosion saint inscription were Bai Li Hong's work. It was only natural he was familiar with their power. Although the explosive flame saint inscription and corrosion saint inscription are 3-star saint inscriptions with great power, you can only use them on early saint rudiment stage powerhouses at the most due to your true energy and cultivation base at the perfection mortal shedding stage, Bai Li Hong told Duan Lingtian. Saint inscriptions needed to be activated via true energy. Only powerful true energy would be able to unleash the full force of saint inscriptions. Otherwise, it would only activate a portion of the saint inscription's power. It would work very well if a 1-star saint inscription was used to fight someone with the same cultivation base. However, it was almost impossible to defeat an opponent who was at a level higher. 2-star saint inscriptions, on the other hand, could defeat opponents at a higher level. However, the opponent's ability would ultimately determine if one would be able to defeat one's opponent. For instance, now that Duan Lingtian was at the perfection mortal shedding stage, even without the strange pupil and saint inscriptions, no martial cultivators and Dao cultivators at the mastery mortal shedding stage could fight on even ground with him even if they used 2-star saint inscriptions. He did not need the strange pupil or saint inscriptions to defeat those at a higher level. However, 3-star saint inscriptions allowed one to fight opponents who were 2 levels higher. If someone at the perfection mortal shedding stage activated a 3-star saint inscription with their true energy, he would be able to fight with early saint rudiment stage powerhouses on even ground. One would have to break through to the paramount mortal shedding stage if one wanted to use a 3-star saint inscription effectively on intermediate saint rudiment stage powerhouses. Saint inscriptions depended on one's true energy level. The higher the true energy level, the more powerful it was. Naturally, it still had a limit no matter how powerful it was. At that time, it would depend on the grade of the saint inscriptions. If it was a 2-star saint inscription, it would only be able to threaten someone at the imminent saint stage. It would not be able to harm saint stage powerhouses. Only 3-star inscriptions would be able to threaten saint stage powerhouses. However, to fight on even ground with saint stage powerhouses with the help of 3-star inscriptions, one would have to be at the perfection saint rudiment stage. The perfection saint rudiment stage was 2 levels away from the saint stage. Imminent saint stage was the paramount mortal shedding stage. It was called the imminent saint stage because it was close to the saint stage. The gap between the saint stage and non-saint stage was even bigger than the gap between the mortal shedding stage and the innate stage. I can only use the 3-star saint inscriptions effectively if I use it on early saint rudiment stage powerhouses, Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he raised his eyebrow. It seems like I must elevate my cultivation base faster. Currently, I'm very close to breaking through to the paramount mortal shedding stage. As soon as I break through to the paramount mortal shedding stage, I'm confident I'll be able to defeat those at the intermediate saint rudiment stage. Naturally, he meant he could defeat those at the intermediate saint rudiment stage without using the strange pupil. Duan Lingtian did not dare to think about those at the mastery saint rudiment stage. Those at the mastery saint rudiment stage would have already mastered the true energy consolidated weapon technique. Even if he were to use strange pupil, he might only be able to distract them for a second at the cost of draining all his spiritual energy. He might not be able to defeat the person during that 1 second. The true energy consolidated weapon technique would definitely be able to block his attack. There's really a great divide between the mastery saint rudiment stage and the intermediate saint rudiment stage. Duan Lingtian knew that very well. Thank you, senior brother, Duan Lingtian thanked Bai Li Hong as he put away the sun-shooting bow. He could tell that Bai Li Hong poured his heart into inscribing the 2 3-star saint inscriptions judging by how well they worked together with the penetration saint inscription. We're brothers. I don't think it's necessary to thank each other. Bai Li Hong smiled and shook his head. Subsequently, he asked eagerly, Junior brother, how much progress did you make with the strange inscription art in the past 10 days? I should be able to inscribe saint inscriptions with the strange inscription art now, Duan Lingtian said with a smile. Bai Li Hong was dumbstruck when he heard that. He had only handed over the jade token containing the strange inscription art recoding to Duan Lingtian 10 days ago. After 10 days, Duan Lingtian actually said he could inscribe saint inscriptions with it. How could he not be shocked by that? Junior brother, let's go. Let's head back. An invisible force swept out when Bai Li Hong lifted his arm. The force covered Duan Lingtian within it and brought him along as they rushed back to the Moon Illumination sect. They headed back to the inner court and back to Bai Li Hong's mansion. He was eager to see Duan Lingtian's strange inscription art technique. Up until now, he did not manage to master the strange inscription art at all. Meanwhile, this junior brother that he had accepted on behalf of his teacher had mastered the strange inscription art within 10 days. There was a quiet room in Bai Li Hong's mansion that was exclusively used for inscribing saint inscriptions. One should not be disturbed when inscribing saint inscriptions. Otherwise, all effort would go to waste. Duan Lingtian and Bai Li Hong were the only 2 people in the quiet room at the moment. There was a stone table with a sword lying on top of it in a quiet room. It was clearly a saint weapon. Meanwhile, there was a vessel containing an unknown liquid next to the sword. The unknown liquid was dark yellow, and it would occasionally boil and bubble. Junior brother, would you really be able to inscribe the drifting light saint inscription with inscription ink that's made with such little materials? Bai Li Hong asked in disbelief as he glanced at the dark yellow liquid in the vessel. The drifting light saint inscription was a 1-star saint inscription. Bai Li Hong knew the saint inscription very well since it was a very common 1-star saint inscription. He practiced it many times when he had just become a 1-star saint inscription master. He knew the materials required to inscribe the saint inscription like the back of his hand. No materials should be excluded when inscribing saint inscriptions. Meanwhile, his junior brother, Duan Lingtian, was going to inscribe the drifting light saint inscription, but the materials he was going to use were half, or even more than half, of the regular amount. The cost of the material was reduced close to 2/3 of the original cost. Although he knew one of the main points of the strange inscription art was how cost-saving it was, he still found the fact that it required so little materials mind-boggling. Senior brother, just watch. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly, and his voice was filled with confidence. In the next second, he extended his right hand and held Bai Li Hong's 9-star inscription pen. He extended his left hand after taking a deep breath and picked up the sword on the table. It was his first time using the strange inscription art to inscribe saint inscription. Naturally, he had run through the scenario in his head countless times during the past 10 days, so he was familiar with the steps. Therefore, he would just have to repeat the steps. As Duan Lingtian shook his right hand that was holding the 9-star inscription pen, the 9-star inscription pen seemed to have turned into a bolt of lightning and shot straight at the inscription ink. The inscription ink was the general name for liquid refined from materials required to inscribe saint inscriptions. The 9-star inscription pen that moved with lightning speed dipped into the inscription ink with its sharp tip like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. It dripped onto the sword in Duan Lingtian's left hand. Suddenly, a mark appeared on the body of the sword. As Duan Lingtian moved his right hand rapidly, complicated patterns appeared on the sword's body while a drop of inscription ink flowed according to the patterns. It seemed like water flowing in a stream, everything seemed natural. Duan Lingtian's movement was as smooth as flowing water. Meanwhile, Bai Li Hong, who was watching from the side, was dumbstruck as soon as it began. Duan Lingtian's speed when inscribing the saint inscription was even faster than him. Is this the strange inscription art? I wonder how much spiritual energy he needs to perform at such a rapid speed. Junior brother's really the right one to learn the strange inscription art. Bai Li Hong's heart jolted lightly. His emotions were stirred. It's so fast. It's too fast. Looking at Duan Lingtian's movement, those two thoughts were the only thing left in Bai Li Hong's mind. So this is the difference between the saint inscription Dao and the strange inscription art. Bai Li Hong's emotion was complicated when he finally regained his senses. It's done. When Bai Li Hong's mind was about to wander again, Duan Lingtian straightened his back and stopped his movement. Senior brother, check the effect of this drifting light saint inscription, and see if the effect is weakened or not. It's done. Bai Li Hong's jaw dropped when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. One must know that even the current him would need at least half an hour to inscribe the drifting light saint inscription. However, his junior brother only used less than 15 minutes. It was less than half the time he spent on the inscription. He was a 3-star saint inscription master. As he took a deep breath and suppressed his shock, Bai Li Hong took the sword Duan Lingtian handed him. The expression in his eyes became complicated after he tested the 1-star saint inscription, the drifting light saint inscription. The effect is not weakened, Bai Li Hong said with a sigh after he caught his breath. The strange inscription art is really an amazing technique. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I have no fate with it due to my spiritual energy application. The application of spiritual energy depended on one's talent in spiritual energy. Bai Li Hong was clearly lacking in this aspect. It was not just him, most saint inscription masters would not be able to do it. Duan Lingtian was relieved when he heard Bai Li Hong's words. Although he had gone through the steps of the strange inscription art in his head countless times, this was his first time putting it to practice. This was why it was difficult for him to not have doubts even though he was confident. Senior brother, your inscription pen, Duan Lingtian called out when Bai Li Hong was softly caressing the drifting light saint inscription on the sword in his hand. Duan Lingtian handed the inscription pen to him. However, Bai Li Hong did not take it even though he lifted his head up to look at it. His eyes gleamed as he clenched his teeth. It seemed as though he had made a major decision. Junior brother, you can have this 9-star inscription pen, I'll buy myself another one when I head to Han River City, Bai Li Hong said as he looked at Duan Lingtian. A hint of reluctance flashed in the depth of his eyes. Since you've inherited teacher's strange inscription art, it's only right that you have this inscription pen. Senior brother, if it's not for you, I wouldn't have been able to learn teacher's strange inscription art. This 9-star inscription pen is your fortune. I don't deserve to be your junior brother if I actually take away what you love. Duan Lingtian shook his head persistently.